Bob's probably going to be late.
And Bob's going to be late.
Bob's going to be late, that's right.
We have a quorum to start.
By the skin of our teeth.
Well, barely, but we'll see what we can at least do here. Dan, will you lead us in the pledge when that's time?
Sure, I will.
Thank you.
Missing Wheelock and Gorfalat, and then Johnson's going to be late. Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to get started here. We will call to order as soon as it comes up on my computer. It's there, okay. We will call to order the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners regular meeting for Wednesday, June 21st. If we would please rise for the pledge, led by Dr. Lathrop.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please, Sarah.
Klaus?
Here.
Mayor?
Here.
Lathrop?
Yep.
Crawford?
Here?
I show Johnson will be delayed and Wheelock and Gorflet are excused.
Yes, thank you. We have approval of the minutes. We have the minutes of June 7th, 2017, the special meeting, and also the minutes of June 7th, 2017, our regular meeting. Anybody have any changes? Okay, those stand approved. This is our first chance for public comment. Would you read the rules, please, Sarah?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners, which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioner questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
Okay, would anybody like to make public comment at this time? Nobody? Everybody's going to wait. Oh, go ahead. You need to come on up to the podium and tell us your name and address. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Rebecca Dornoff, and I live at 4784 Bartlett Road in Williamsburg. I'm in Acme, whatever. Anyway, I'm here about, I realize the financial issue, I suppose, but the pavilions, I'm here to represent the patients, and I haven't ever lived in the pavilions, but I have known a number of people who've been through their rehab, and the services are specific to the pavilions that they provide with the excellent staff that they employ there, and the pool in particular. There is no other pool in this town that has the specific aspects of the pool with the pavilions. And I've been through 14 knee surgeries, and I would not be getting around as well as I am if it wasn't for that pool. And the therapist for months and after my surgeries would tell me that. And so the biggest thing is that because to privatize it, would, as we all know, would not be the same, it would change it. And I know many people who went through the rehab situation and utilizing the pool in particular, who were able to, many of them returned back home. Not all of them, but many of them did. And those of us who are in the aftercare hours, and I have a number of special needs children at home, and I would not be able to care for my family if I had not had the pavilions to help me with my recoveries, especially after my surgery, and my long-term trying to keep going with the arthritis.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you. Anybody else? There will be other chances at other times, so. Okay. We will move on to the approval of the agenda. I will start with seeing that we are down 2 people, 2 commissioners. And 10A, the pension stabilization plan, I'm not real comfortable discussing and especially voting and making decisions with only 4, maybe 5 of us here. So I would propose that we remove 10A, 1 through 5, and discuss that on July 19th. Tom?
Well, on the likelihood that somebody in the public would like to speak, I think it would be okay to have some discussion, but I understand why you would want to delay any voting. And because the next meeting isn't, for over 3 weeks, right?
July 19th.
The other option would be to have a special meeting between now and then where we could vote. Because
There are options. Dan?
Can I ask council, are we obligated to take this off because of the number of people here?
Well, you're not obligated. You can keep it on if that's the desire of the board, but it does pose problems when there is only 4 or 5 of you here. Are you going to have the necessary votes to vote one way or the other? And you might not. But, that's really something that's up to you. If you want to keep it on the agenda, you can. If you want to move it, you can move it.
My feeling is that a couple weeks ago, if any two individuals would have said, we can't be there for that date, I think that we would have all agreed not to put it on this date. I really do feel that these are big decisions, and that that require all 7 of us to get Commissioner Johnson up to speed. We are discussing removing the pension stabilization plan discussion because there are only 5 of us.
I'm ready to put the thing to
Because-
bed.
But there are only 5 of us to vote. And it is something big that we've been discussing for quite some time, and I personally feel that all 7 of us should be here. We've postponed it before in advance because we knew people weren't going to be here, so that's just my feeling. So I would, Tom?
I just reiterate that, I understand the voting part, but I think we could have some discussion, especially if the public came for that reason. And setting another date sooner than the 19th could just be a special meeting. Because the 19th is a ways off. Everybody understands that.
I just don't know that postponing it, there's not any deadlines that we're meeting. We've already taken a big step in asking MERS, agreeing to MERS plan for 16 years. So I think these other things, it's possible to have them wait a month.
Yeah, because if we did discuss it, one of my questions would be, in that portion of the evening, I would ask when do we think that's going to, a transaction would take place, where we would send the money and that would show on our account, and the actual action of changing it from 12 to 16 years, when that would take place. That's worth some discussion. So.
Go ahead, Ron.
I would just ask if we would be removing things off the agenda if I wasn't here, or Dan or Bob wasn't here. Just putting it out there.
I would have removed it, personally, I would remove it no matter who was missing. I think all 7, regardless of their feelings on anything, all 7 need to be here for that. I really do. It doesn't matter who was going to vote which way on any of these things. All 7 need to be here. We've talked about that before.
I guess for me, I'm just, like I said, I'm ready to have some action on it one way or the other. We've keep beating this horse.
I agree.
And whether they're here or not, at this point, we still have a process, so.
And it can be brought back up if any of the
That's
ones
fine. We can leave it for discussion
Okay.
if you would like to,
Okay.
and discuss it at that time. That's fine. So do we have any other changes to the agenda at all? We can leave that on there for now. Nope. Do I have a motion?
Madam Chairman, or Madam Chairwoman,
Thank you.
have to do that right. I make a motion that we approve agenda as written.
Support.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Klaus. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Move on to the consent calendar. Sarah, please.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file, or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive and file. Resolution of support MSU to assist with the eradication of the spotted wing Drosophila from Oceania. 2, Conservation District May report. 3, Road Commission June report. 4, April 2017 monthly financial report. 5, June staff report. B, approvals. 1, 2017 hauler licenses. 2, fixed asset disposal request Sheriff's Office. 3, May 2017 claims approval. 4, fiscal year 2017 budget amendments. 5, support for Grand Traverse Band 2% grant applications. 6, 2017 tax rate request L4029.
Does anybody from the board have anything to remove from the consent calendar and be discussed elsewhere? Anybody from administration?
No.
Or anybody from the public? Okay, do I have a motion?
Move we approve the consent calendar as presented.
I'll second.
Moved by Commissioner Johnson, supported by Commissioner Mayer. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Special orders of business, we have none. We have no items removed from the consent calendar. We have departmental items. Drain Commissioner. I see him back there.
He's there. I saw him come in.
Welcome.
Hi, and thank you. Before you, you have a resolution, a proposed resolution to advance $10,000 to the revolving drain fund 639. That fund is basically out of money, and we need to continue to move forward with the Duck Lake Special Assessment District. We had the hearing on May 8th, and you folks, the board, approved moving forward with this with this project. But in order to do so, we need additional funds in the revolving drain fund, and that will be recovered during the once we get the special assessment district set up, and that, as well as a previous advancement that the board made to this fund as well.
And how much was the previous advancement?
$10,000 as well.
So it would be a total of 20?
Correct.
That we would get back when the special assessment district was formed? Okay. Anybody have any questions? Yes, Dan?
What is holding up I know that there's been 2 public input, I think there's been 2 input meetings for public to talk about it. What's the?
Well, the last meeting on May 8th, not meeting, but the last hearing on May 8th set the winter, reaffirmed the summer level for Duck Lake, and set a winter level at 6 inches below the summer level. So that was what that was for. Now we need to hold another public hearing for the special assessment apportionment. And is that right, Chris?
Well, actually, we do have to go back to court in front of Judge Power. When we attended the court hearing on May 8th, there were, I would say, approximately 30 residents at Duck Lake who showed up for the hearing, asked us a lot of questions about what is this about, what is the process, made comments to Judge Power that I thought overall were positive comments, but more along the lines of what is this going to cost me at the end of the day. And what Judge Power wants to do is set a second hearing.
Okay.
Given the amount of comments he's got from the public, he would like to give the public one more chance to provide comments. We have submitted a proposed order. Scott Howard and I did prepare a proposed order that would ask the judge to set the lake level, set a winter level, and confirm the special assessment district. And so now we're just waiting for the judge to have a second hearing and hopefully enter that.
So this extra 10,000 is basically for ongoing legal fees?
It is for the legal fees and also for the meetings, and we will probably not use that entire $10,000, but I do not want to come back to this
I get it.
board.
I get
and,
it,
you know,
okay.
If we don't use it, then it just goes back, when we pay back the general fund.
Thank you.
Yes.
Is this the only revolving fund we have for the drain commissioner for drains, or are there other ones?
I don't know if I can answer that.
That this is the only revolving fund for the drains. Each of the other funds are dedicated to a certain drain, but this is the only one that's called the revolving. Most counties, all counties have revolving funds, an average of about $250,000 in that revolving fund to take on new projects as they come, which then you get paid back once those special assessment districts occur.
So this revolving fund that you're asking for, the extra $10,000, which would be $20,000, is strictly for Duck Lake?
No, this is also, there were other projects that were in there as well, such as there were 5 resolutions from the petitions from the Road Commission for, drain projects, and that's where, those were included in that. Yes.
So then the drains that were up on the peninsula, 2 drains up there, the Blair drain that was from 3 years ago, and the one
In Long Lake.
in Long Lake.
Correct.
And it seems to me there's another one. Cass Road.
Yes.
There's 3 of those drains are basically dead right now, correct?
Actually, there were 4. The Cass Road wasn't included. It was called the River Mountain, I think,
Okay.
was the other one.
Correct.
Yeah,
All right.
so
Well,
there's...
that was Blair Township.
That's the River Mountain, okay. And Jim's here, he might be able to answer. But
So-
yes, the Cedar Run drain is not, dead in the water, but I just haven't had time to really focus on that, and I need to meet out with Road Commission staff on that.
So with that drain revolving fund, who's obligated to pay that back? Because funds were used for that for 3 drains that are not drains now, 3 hearings. How does that money get paid back to that revolving fund if there's no drain?
Well, the Road Commission did approve $2,500 per drain, or a total of $10,000 for those 5 petitions. And it came in about $21,000 with the legal fees and like that the previous drain commissioner had, overseen. And so there's about $11,000 difference. This board did approve through another resolution in 2015 an advancement of $15,000, I believe, to cover those costs. I wasn't obviously in office at that time.
Right. So I guess I'm asking also with the Duck Lake drain, because that sounds like it's going to be a drain district, and there's going to be an assessment to the people there. Are they going to be the ones paying for this?
No, none of the other costs will be included in that Duck Lake special assessment, except for the cost associated directly with that project.
Okay, so whatever we would be out money on the other drains, we're just out the money.
Yes.
If it came in at $11,000 and the Road Commission paid $10,000, there's $1,000 that the...
It actually came in at 21, the Road Commission paid 10, so there's
Okay, so there's
$11,000 difference there
that the county has paid for that they won't get back because there's no place to assess it to.
Apparently, yes.
Okay, any other questions? I would move that we approve Resolution 87, oh no, that was already approved. The revolving drain fund 629 advanced funding, $10,000.
I'll second it.
Okay? Moved by Commissioner Crawford, seconded by Commissioner Lathrop. Any further discussion?
It doesn't sound like we have much of a choice.
We will, yeah, I mean, yeah, we will.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We move on to our Deputy Civil Counsel and our Planning Director are going to talk to us about the county-owned properties that we have been asking about.
So I think I'm going to get things started here.
Okay?
Both John and I put together, I would argue, is a detailed, comprehensive memo that was done in response to the resolution that was passed at the June regular board meeting, that we addressed the Civic Center, pavilions, the governmental center property, Twin Lakes. We also included Power Island and Maple Bay Park, even though that wasn't included in the June resolution. I know it's been discussed by commissioners in the past, and so we both thought it would be a good idea to address those properties as all. Again, the memo we put together is detailed, it's comprehensive. We hope everybody has looked through it. I'm not going to go through all of it for you.
That's
And I
okay.
don't think John is going to go through it all.
How about
for
some
you.
highlights?
Sure. I thought, Chris, if you could maybe touch off on the first part where we talk about the principles in terms
Sure.
of the county relation to property
Right.
transactions.
So what we wanted to do is first start off, what can the Board of Commissioners do when it comes to property? And the Board of Commissioners Act, MCL 4611, we gave you the 4 subsections that talk about your ability to purchase or lease property, to remove or designate a new site for a county building, authorize the sale or lease of real estate belonging to the county, and then erect the necessary buildings for county purposes. And because some of these properties were designated by the Parks Commission in their master plan as being parks property, we also thought it would be a good idea to provide the statute under the County Regional Parks Act, MCL 46-362, the language in that act that says a county Parks and Rec Commission has the custody, control, and management of all park property. The Parks Commission existing rules address that. They also have a provision in there that even though they have control, custody, and management of the parks, this body can override a decision of the Parks Board if at least 3 commissioners request in writing that the Board of Commissioners review such action, and then it's simply a majority of county commissioners elected and serving may override that decision at a board meeting. So we wanted to start out with the general principles and then move into the current list that we've developed. And so, maybe I'll turn it over to John now.
Can I ask a question, Chris? So if the county buys a piece of property and it's not for parks, but Parks and Rec can just put that in part of their master plan?
So the simple answer is yes.
Okay.
That's the simple answer?
That's as simple as I need, yes.
Okay.
Thank you. So they could do the same with this building here, with the being by the river and the nice park setting we have.
I guess they could.
Okay.
Why they would do that? I don't know.
Right. No, thank you. I just wanted to be clear.
Tom,
But keep in mind, the board,
you have to talk into your microphone so
the Board
everybody
of
can hear.
Commissioners has the authority to override any of those decisions. So
Correct. Yep. Thank you.
Okay, I'll start going through some of these, at least give you some kind of high-level overview of them. The first one is the Civic Center, which is a 40-acre park site in the city of Traverse City. The main encumbrances related to that are 3 key grants that were granted to the county. There was a federal grant, a Land and Water Conservation Fund grant, and 2 DNR grants that were done later in the 1980s. because those were provided to the county, there are certain restrictions that came with those grants. And in their perpetuity programs, which those entities, the DNR, the National Park Service, require that those properties remain in recreational use. They don't necessarily have to remain in county ownership, but they need to remain in recreational use. They do have a provision for something called a conversion, which allows for that property to be reused for other purposes, but it does require approval from those entities in terms of any portion of that property as well. And what they will do in terms of reviewing that is they will require that you provide additional or alternate property that's equal value or higher in terms of monetary value as well as recreation value. The county did incur this back in about 2007, 2008, 2009, I believe. There was a cell tower that was sited on the Civic Center. And so the county did do a conversion and purchased 5 acres out by Maple Bay Park. So that was, so there is that provision there that both the DNR and the National Park Service provide. Those are really the only restrictions on that particular property. And there was no other deed restrictions or anything that we were able to find.
I'm going to start, so let's say that somebody says the Civic Center, I'm just going to pull a number, means nothing, but let's say the Civic Center, somebody says is worth $10 million, that property. If we wanted to sell it and to somebody who was going to use it for non-recreational purposes, we would have to buy for $10 million other recreational property in exchange.
That's correct.
Okay.
And it's also, it's not just the monetary, it's also the recreational value. And it can't be existing public land, it has to be purchased as part of that process.
Okay. Bob, you look distraught.
No, I mean, this memo pretty much told what I thought anyway, but what if you sold it to the DNR?
Well, as long as it's maintained and you could, so long as it's...
I mean, I'm going there, please.
I mean, it's something that's provided, obviously, we've gone through it before, so we have some sense of it, but it is, for the entire property or the majority of it, it would be considerable, but there may be still some options available for portions of it. I mean, it's not to say that it's completely off the table, but it's just a restriction.
Dan?
So you call it conversion, like on the Maple Bay property, they took a portion of it and put up a tower, and that was allowed. So theoretically, could we take a portion of this property and build houses?
Yes. In the case of the cell tower is on the Civic Center property.
Yeah.
And the 5 acres was an additional to the 450-plus acres that are out there right now, so that was added on. The county had to purchase that. Certainly you could go through this process, and it's certainly available to the county if it wants to choose that, but it could take a portion of that Civic Center property and develop it for housing, commercial, or whatever.
And then describe to me, let's say, I don't have any idea number. Let's say we could sell it for, I don't know, $500,000. A portion of it, and put up some type of housing. We'd have to get permission from who? From the people that gave us those grants?
Yes, the DNR and the National Park Service. And you also have to understand, too, that this property is within the city of Traverse City, so if you're, right now, it's in terms of their master plan and their zoning ordinance, it's accommodating a civic center of 45 acres, a recreational park. If you were to portion off a part of it for, say, housing, that's an issue that would have to go through those channels, because that would be public land that would now be in private hands. So there would be some process that would have to be followed in terms of the city's master plan and zoning ordinance.
I want to make it clear to everybody, I'm not saying I want to do that, I just want to know what's available.
Right.
We have to keep clarifying those things, right?
Yeah, you do, yeah.
Just asking questions and discussing.
Okay, thank you, John.
Yep, Bob?
Well, we haven't, I mean, part of this was a fact-finding thing. We've never had a list like this of
No.
looking at what do we own, what do we think the value is, and what can we do with it. So, I mean, you know, I think a lot of things have been thrown out there that, you know, we were going to for sure sell the pavilions and that, but it just was good to know.
It just came
you
from
know?
questions
And
that
it's
were
funny, though,
asked.
how this has turned into another fear campaign,
Yeah,
just like the
balloon.
COA with all the, you know, we're
Kind
going
of.
to take away people's dogs on this one, too, somehow. So
That's next week. That's animal control is on for next week.
I won't be here for that one next week, darn
Oh,
it.
man, that's not, then I'm going to move it. Okay, so Civic Center is mostly a no, we can't sell it, but we could with difficulties. Major hurdles, correct? Major hurdles to doing really much.
Yeah, I
City
don't-
Commission, the DNR, okay. And our own Parks Commission has that under their custody and control at the moment. Yes, Tom?
One other issue that was discussed was that it could be transferred to another municipal entity, such as the city. And if you were looking at a way of saving costs, you could take that overhead, if the city would accept it, of course, and move it into their park system.
That's possible. We
Yeah.
could sell it to the city.
Right, well, the ownership is not the issue, it's the use.
It's the use,
change of
okay.
use is
The
when
use is
when
the
these
issue, okay.
restrictions come into place.
I would still recommend contacting DNR and get their blessing, but my guess is, so long as the city's going to use it as a park, they would have no problem with that.
Okay. Moving on
Could
to,
I say one more thing about Civic Center?
yes, sir.
Okay. Well, first, I'd just like to apologize to anybody, especially the residents of the pavilions, if we upset them in any way by even discussing that we made a list, and then how it got blown up to selling it, you know, whether that was going to ever happen or not, wasn't really what the objective was. The objective was to have a list, and it's very important to know what you own. On the Civic Center, I would say that there doesn't seem to be any public interest in selling it, and the housing was the only thing that I looked at as a possibility. And since the public probably doesn't wish to have housing in that property there, then I would suggest that somebody actually look at the idea of having housing on the outside borders of it. Some affordable housing, so that people could have some opportunity to have affordable housing in the county, that the county would encourage it, not necessarily run it, probably not run it. But if you just take a look at the northwest corner, or the northwest corner where Arby's used to have a business, and there's some land there, that might make a nice place to put up a housing building of some kind. If somebody wants to investigate that. Then the people who reside there wouldn't have to cross the main road to be able to use the park. And I think that would be a nice opportunity.
Isn't that already being developed by Rite Aid right there at that property?
Oh, it is.
Yeah, and there will be
Yeah.
an easement on that side because they have to remove some trees and things, so yeah.
Then I guess I would look somewhere else around the periphery of it, and if anybody wants to take the initiative, but I think some housing in that vicinity would be a good idea. Some housing that would be more dense than a single-family home.
Okay, we will move on. Let's talk about the pavilions.
Okay, the pavilions is a relatively complicated parcel. There's a lot of things involved in that. It's a facility that was, at least for the Grand Traverse County, was established in 1959. Obviously, the current facility was established back in the 1990s. There was a millage that was in place for roughly 20 years that helped to fund the construction of the pavilions. There was actually 3 bonds associated with the pavilions as well. There is still one outstanding bond that's related to the cottages. So on this property of roughly about 22 acres, there's the pavilion structure that we all know, and then there's the cottages, the 3 cottages, historic cottages to the west of that building that are all they're all on the same parcel itself. The question regarding the bonds is that obviously if there was any change in ownership, that bond would have to be addressed, the outstanding one. There's also some question that did not follow up with bond counsel, but because this was a voter-approved millage that funded this, if there's any restrictions or problems with that, we didn't pursue that at this time. There's also the ownership of it is currently under the ownership of the building authority. That was done as part of the transaction for the bonds that were issued for that particular property. There's also the direction in ownership in terms of the DHHS board, which is providing oversight of this property as well in terms of getting their approval or their support or direction in terms of how the ownership of the property would be. There's also, it's not in the memo, but just something just came to light recently, is in terms of the historic lawn, which is part of the commons there, that a portion of that historic lawn is on this particular site, as well as there's an adjacent parcel of about 1 acre, 710 South Elmwood, that is also part of the historic front lawn for the Building 50 and the rest of the commons. So that, we don't know necessarily what restrictions are related to that. That would be something that would have to be investigated through the State Historic Preservation Office. But those are some of the encumbrances on here. I don't know, Chris, if you wanted to mention anything.
The only other thing I would mention is that in looking at the title history, this property came from the state of Michigan. The state of Michigan conveyed the property to the Green Traverse Commons Redevelopment Corporation. So the commons and pavilions was developed all together. The quitclaim deed related to pavilions has language that says the parcel is subject to all of the terms and conditions of conveyance contained in the purchase agreement between the state of Michigan as grantor and the Redevelopment Corporation as grantee dated April 18th, 1995. At this point in time, I've checked with the county clerk, I've checked with administration, I've checked with Register of Deeds. Nobody can locate that agreement for me. So that agreement may contain additional restrictions. But the biggest hurdle I see right now is ownership is with the building authority. Building authority owns it until the bonds are paid off. They're an independent quasi-municipal corporation is what the law considers them. And even though this board, I think, could approach the building authority and talk about this issue, they're not an agency of the county, so it's not like the board could direct them to do this sale. So that's probably the biggest hang up, as well as, you know, the language found in the state's Welfare Act, Social Welfare Act, that talks about the power of the DHHS board in its oversight of the operations of that facility.
Questions about the pavilions? It
I
seems like
mean,
we can't.
That's just the beauty of an authority, is that it actually keeps government hands from
It's
getting
checks
in
and
there.
balances.
I mean, that's what we
against
did with
us.
the state, with
Yes.
the homes development authority, to kind of limit the state influence too, so. And
Ron,
again, it looks like nothing we can do.
Is with the bonds, does that tie up the property as well? Or is it the building? Is it the vacant land, if that could be something done with?
You know, we'd have to check with bond counsel on that. I don't know the answer right now.
Okay.
well, this says that bond of $3,210,000, not callable until May 1st, 2025. Bond counsel has indicated that a conveyance of pavilions could not occur until all outstanding bonds are paid, and they're not callable until May 1st, 2025.
I think your question, Ron, is, does that mean the building, or does
Right.
that
Oh, okay.
relate to
Property.
property?
Right.
And I don't know that answer.
Okay. How about is with the building authority regarding the pavilions, all departments in the county, or at least I know that the construction code, they pay rent for their office space, and they're a enterprise fund, so they're self-funded by permits that are pulled, and the staff there is funded by those permits as well. Is the pavilions anything similar to that, where we could be expecting to see any kind of a rent payment or lease payment?
That, I don't know if they are. I do know this. I know that when the building authority issued the bonds. They were deeded the property, and then the building authority leased the building or the property, and again, that's a question, what exactly does that mean, back to the county, and charged the county rent that went to the building authority to pay the bonds. What that relationship exists today is the pavilions, are they paying rent?
They're paying off the bonds,
They are paying
is
off
what
the
they're
bonds.
doing.
Yeah.
So rather than pay us and have us pay the bonds, the pavilions are paying the bonds.
But they're paying, they must be paying less today than they would have been paying prior to 2015, because there was, one of the other bonds was,
They've paid off,
Well, there was a millage in place. and
Yeah.
That millage was paying off those bonds. So that millage has gone away because that was the main bond that was related to the main facility. There's still those two that were outstanding related to the cottages.
Okay.
So that's one of the ones that's left over, the 3.2 million.
Dan?
So I can understand this, I've been in situations where I owned a piece of property, I had a mortgage on it, and then I had a home equity loan as well. And so when you go to let's say get another mortgage, there's kind of liens on that home. So they have a way of working it out that you can close and these things get paid off. If we came up with, if someone offered the county a deal that would pay those bonds off in the process of a transaction, could we sell it?
We can't. Right? We would have to.
We could approach the,
The building is, it would, yeah, it's complicated, but, so that deal would have to be run through the building authority.
right,
So then they would deed it over to the county with the understanding that the bonds are now paid off. And then the county could then, once they become owners, could conceivably sell it, but then we have the hurdle of Section 58 of the Social Welfare Act. And at that point, are we talking about the sale of the facility itself? If we're talking about the sale of the facility itself, then is that something that the DHHS board has ultimate authority over, not the county board of commissioners? Because they supervise and are responsible for the operation of the facility.
I guess I'm asking, it looks like there'd be a lot of hurdles.
There are.
And everyone says, oh, we can't do it. The question is it doable?
I would say it is doable, but it's a big if.
Okay.
Also, we are required by, is it Public Act 280, to provide for the elderly, indigent elderly in the community. We are required to provide for them, and the medical care facility is how we do that. So in the absence of the medical care facility, then we don't.
I'm not saying that I want to sell.
Oh, I understand. I'm just saying that.
Can we sell it or not?
Well, but, and then we are not abiding by the law that says that we have to provide for those people.
We could build another, I don't know.
Okay.
I'm just
I know.
wondering, can we sell it is the question. And you're saying it could be done, but it'd be a big deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Bob's grinning away. There's
Anything's
a lot,
possible, but
there's so many hurdles.
Geez, oh,
And I
please.
really,
We tie up administration for years on trying to do that and to get nothing, really.
and honestly, as Commissioner Mayer said earlier, I feel really bad that we're even talking about this particular property. This is not like the other properties that we've talked about. People live there. Over 300 people live there. And they're living out their last years there. And I feel really bad that this has even came up that, oh, they're going to sell it, when really all we were doing was just asking questions that we got answered today. So I do feel bad that it kind of got blown out of proportion, that, we really just wanted to know these things that we just found out. What are the hurdles, how many hurdles? They seem insurmountable to me,
Yeah.
and totally not worth it.
Just for the record, I'm not saying I want to sell it.
Okay, good.
Just want to know some answers.
Yeah, so now we have the answers of what that would require. So,
The intent was to assess your asset base.
Right.
And find out what your options are in that asset base. We're doing the same thing with cell towers. We have someone coming up Monday that may help us look at those, but cell towers aren't as exciting as pavilions, so
Well, I
we don't
bet
get the
we're,
feedback.
I bet we're severely getting paid under what market rate is probably on a lot of those.
Oh yeah, it's terrible. We're getting, it's laughable, the deals we made, but we're going to try to straighten those out. This is just looking at your organization, finding out your resources and your assets, giving you the information so that you can make good business decisions in terms of what your options are. Simple as that, but it's not going after any particular piece of property.
Tom and then Ron.
Yeah, I'm personally opposed to selling the Grand Traverse Pavilions, and I intend to attend the next meeting of the DHHS board so that I can be there in person to give my feelings. And before we're through with this whole memorandum, I would like to go back to number 2, maybe at the end.
Well, we're going to,
Yeah,
we'll go back.
Because we skipped over that, so.
Okay,
yeah.
we'll go back. I think next on the list is the governmental center.
I wanted to
Oh, I'm
ask
sorry, I forgot.
one question
I did.
regarding the
Sorry.
pavilions, and it's their pension. Is the county ultimately responsible for the liability if they were to fail?
If they were unable to pay their pension, we would be the liable party, yes.
As well as the road commissions.
Road commission, the same way.
They're a component unit like the road commission is.
Right. Last I checked, I believe the pension funding balance for the pavilions was 66%. And you may know.
No, it was closer to 80.
Higher, I don't have it memorized, but I...
Corey's back there, and I think it was closer to 80. 78.
Maybe that was a road commission, it was 66.
I'm not sure, the road commission's here as well.
I thought they were better.
They just said,
So they're in the high 70s, both of them. So, okay,
nice position to be in.
it is. Governmental center,
Just want to...
Something else.
Want to comment, too, that, remember that the county has a lease with the pavilions for the former health services building on Garfield
yes, we do.
Road. So they're potentially, that's a 20-year lease for $500,000. If there were to be any type of transaction, that lease potentially could be impacted. So just to understand, there's just that added complication to that particular issue. The governmental center, this building here, it's about a 55,000 square foot building, sits on 1.79 acres. So it's basically this building, the front parking lot, and the parking lot to the south of here.
Does it include the jail?
No, it
And the
does not.
prosecutor's office?
It does not include the prosecutor's office or the jail. That's a separate parcel. So we're
Jail,
just...
yeah, the jail is a separate parcel. I did look at the deed history for that. What is the jail and the courthouse property? It looks like it was conveyed by Perry Hanna back in 1852. That does have a deed restriction on it, saying that that land is forever to be the courthouse and the jail.
Good to know. Okay,
Well, I think that was the original courthouse, and then there was additions added to that with the Hall of Justice and additional properties. But that's one separate parcel. It's about 6 to 7 acres in size. So this is a shy of 2 acres in terms of this land and this building, which are co-owned by joint ownership with the county and the city. In terms of the city owns 26.39% of the building and land, and the county owns 73.61%. They are tenants in common, so there would be a requirement for both parties to agree for the sale of this particular property. I think from my understanding, this was built initially with the intent to providing the services for the community in addition to the city services as well as the county, so it's all in one location. If there was any type of a sale, obviously we would have to find an alternate location for the services that are provided here. Not just the county, but the city would also have to do that as well. There aren't any restrictions other than that in terms of that agreement that would have to be in place. I guess the bigger question is, what is the intent of the county as a whole in terms of providing the services that it does here as well as the city? We did have an initial meeting with the city manager and staff in just apprising them of this, because it is mentioned here in the memo. I don't really have anything really to report out of that, other than to say that this is definitely not on their radar. For them to find an alternate location for many of their operations here is something that's really not in terms of their direction of where they want to go. Now, if you do recall, there was last year when there was discussions about the Park Place Hotel, that when there was a brownfield plan that actually had 4 different phases, and one of those phases was selling off a portion of this property. The corner area on 8th Street and Boardman, that part of that parking lot was, at least in that initial concept, to sell that off, helping to redevelop the 8th Street corridor, as well as provide some revenue for the county and the city to use. There would be a portion of that that could be a parking deck that could be shared between private ownership and the city and the county. That's something that was just in very concept form, so it's a portion of the property, not necessarily the whole property.
Anybody have questions about this building? Okay.
The possibility of a sale and a leaseback isn't part of this memo.
There was an issue with that we wouldn't be able to lease it back for...
Well, we could lease it back. Statutorily, you have a max lease of 20 years. Are there other statutes out there that would let us get around that? Maybe, maybe not, but right now, we're limited to a 20-year lease.
And it would take a developer who wanted to own this building and have us be the tenants in it. So nobody's jumped up and said they want to do that, so...
Madam Chair, there are parties that would be interested in looking at that. But
Okay.
They look at a ROI of about 8%. They look at, possibility of a buyback in 20 years, if it's a triple net, who pays for all the interior and exterior? I mean, it's possible, but this building has a lot of issues to be taken care of in terms of maintenance that have not been taken care of. So all of those things would be included in and would impact the sale price. But, it could be explored.
Yeah, and one of the examples in town was that Haggerty took a relatively new building and sold it and leased it back.
That Commissioner Mayor, is a lot simpler, but I have been in touch with Haggerty's, and they have given me their bond, the party that they work with. I have that information, and could be, if directed, contact them to explore their interest in something like this.
So the city would have to agree to that as well?
But yes, it would have to.
To lease back as well?
If the city wasn't in agreement with that, it'd be wasted time, because they could stop it. But if they were, it certainly could be explored.
This building must have had a bond. They must have sold bonds to build this building.
Back in, I believe, 1978, yeah.
Okay. And which the bonds are paid off.
Yeah.
It's amazing sitting in here and hearing about all of the repairs needed in this building that, basically once you get past your house payment, you should have more money to put into a structure, and it's just another one of those pieces of property that has been neglected.
The approach, from my experience in working with our facilities director, was that there were capital plans in place, but they weren't implemented. And so the way the organization worked culturally, if something broke, they fixed it, but they didn't do a lot of forward thinking to make repairs and things like that to give it a longer life cycle.
Okay. Twin Lakes Park.
Twin Lakes Park is a 160-acre park in Long Lake Township. It was originally, the initial part of that property was deeded to the county back in 1941 from Judge Parm Gilbert for recreational purposes. And it also had additional property that was conveyed to the county by the Lautner family, and that was also to be used for recreational use. Those are the primary restrictions on it, is that if there was to be any sale of the property, or again, for not necessarily sale, but reuse of that property, would require the heirs from those to get waivers from the heirs to those people that donated from those family members to release that property for other use. Now, if it was a transfer to, say, another public entity or whatever, I don't necessarily say that would come into being. I don't know for certain on that, if it's as simple as the Civic Center like that. Chris, if you...
Yeah, if it was, say, transferred to Long Lake Township, or some authority was created, again, kind of like with the Civic Center being transferred to the city, I think that is realistic. I think it's doable. I would still, though, at least at a minimum, try to reach out to the heirs of those families and talk to them.
Is there a criteria for heirs and how far back you go? Do you have to go to the 15th cousin or something like that, or is there some limitation on that because it gets more complex as you go on?
It does, and I don't know the answer off the top of my head. I'd like to think that it's not that complex.
So if we found out that maybe there weren't as many heirs, for example, however what happened, it might not be as complex as you think.
Right.
I got a question. So, when the county commissioners had their retreat there a couple years ago, we actually paid to rent that hall.
correct.
And anybody that goes in there pays to rent it.
Pays for that, right.
And it would seem to me that if I was going to pay to rent that hall, I'd just soon rent it from Long Lake Township, who would be then taking care of the park,
Maintenance.
you know, and we wouldn't be burdened with that. I guess with, you know, having to staff it, having to have parks oversee it, it would lessen our...
My understanding, if I may, Madam Chair, Commissioner, is that there is an intent by the Park Board, and I believe some are here tonight, and I know, talking to Chris Erickson, to enhance the usability of those sites and bring them up to at least a break even. The Power Island, for example, costs, I think, $53,000. I think they made $16,000 last year, so basically you're at a $31,000 loss. But the intent is, by putting more recreational sites and opportunities, to get more people there, so it's a break even. So the intent is to, over time, do that. Now, the YMCA is working with them and taking something over. I guess the question you'd have to ask yourself is, the YMCA better positioned organizationally to drive that process to get to break even as compared to a Park and Recs organization? And I think that's an unknown question. You'd have to be very sales and marketing oriented and bottom line oriented in driving that process. But they're great properties, they got great potential, and I think they're underutilized, not because there isn't awareness it could be better utilized, it just hasn't been maybe the time or maybe the financial resources to bring them up to that level where there's more opportunities for people to use them.
Bob?
Yeah, and I don't know, John Roth is here, so he could probably speak to it, but I know they have a very strong business development committee that really has worked great in the last 2 or 3 years at bringing revenue into these facilities.
Yep.
In fact, I think you're still renting out part of that, part of the lodge.
John, you can step up and let us know
That kind of stuff, so.
what the business
I think they
development team
also
is doing?
have, I think they also have, like for renting out the lodge, if I'm not mistaken, they have to be mindful of not competing against.
Correct.
Right.
So they can't undercut their rates so much.
Well, it's kind of a unique property that
You know, we don't have air conditioning at Gilbert Lodge, so in July, a wedding is really fun. We have boosted our wedding business in particular out there as a wedding venue. That's added a lot. And to correct Administrator Menzel on the island, the reason that's so far off on Power Island last year was we added a well. We had to add the campground. So generally...
It's a one-time cost?
Exactly.
Yeah, and that expanded the number of campsites there too to bring in revenue, right?
Yep, and so we made 16. That almost covers what we normally do per year. So if we lose 1,000 or two, that would be the extreme at Power Island.
And I guess my point was they're looking hard at making good business decisions. I mean, I've been tough on them, as you know, with the pool, you know, but they're doing a good job there with the Y and everything else. So, I mean, as far as, you know, hopefully, would it be nice if they ever got to the enterprise level where they're paying for themselves? It'd be nice. I don't know if you'd get there or not, but
probably not ever totally. I don't think we can do that, especially with like a Maple Bay, though we don't spend anything at Maple Bay either. So, but as far as Twin Lakes, the amount of revenue has increased twofold. Shortly. You know, and
so they're working
we've got
on it.
good books for this year at Twin Lakes for weddings, so and other things, dances and all kinds of other stuff going on there.
Well, they're making good progress. They're good stewards. They are. So, okay, thank you, John. Tell us about Power Island.
Well, that one, there was a memo from Chris
maybe you could
from
tell us about Power Island.
2014. That one is pretty straightforward, I think, in terms of the restrictions that are placed on that.
Yeah, Power Island was purchased with a grant from what was then called the Soil Conservation Services, now called the Natural Resource Conservation Service. And in addition, there was another private donation. And basically what happened was when the Power family deeded over the property, that deed contained restrictions, and the restrictions cited the Soil Conservation Services restrictions that came with the grant. So the deed said there's restrictions. One of the restrictions is the restrictions in place as put on by the grant issued by Soil Conservation Service, SCS, Soil Conservation Service. And so I did review those grants about 3 or so years ago. There was a question raised back then, and it's a similar situation as when we're dealing with the Civic Center. We would have to go back to that federal agency, and we would have to talk to them and get their approval if there's going to be a change in use. Understand, though, that what's different with Power Island, if you compare it to the Civic Center, is that that's not the only restriction. The Power family also put their own restriction on it as well. So really, you're going to have to go back to the grantor as well as the Natural Resource Conservation Service.
Dan?
Would that include, if, let's say, the Peninsula Township wanted to take over Power Island, like at the Civic Center, it's not so much who owns it, but how it's used, is that similar?
I think it's similar. Yeah, I do. I think you're right. I think the intent behind, whether we're talking Power Island, Twin Lakes, or Civic Center, is how is it going to be used? Is it going to be used as a park? It really doesn't matter whether it's the county, township, or whoever, as long as they're maintaining a park. I think we're okay, but again, I'd still want to go back.
And talk to families.
Talk to the family, talk to them, and get their approval.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
Just clarification, there was an article in the paper a while ago regarding that, and I know that Commissioner Lathrop had asked them a number of years ago if they were interested in that island, the Old Mission Township, I believe.
It was very,
they were not interested at that time.
It didn't seem to be then, and it wasn't an official thing, more than just chatting about it.
Well, I received a call from the supervisor of the township wanting to know if there was an interest in transferring it, and I said, well, I didn't know, but we certainly wouldn't say no, and he said he would take it back to his board for discussion if they were interested, and then get back to me, and I stated that I thought it would only have to be used for recreation purposes and nothing else. And then the only benefit that I could see, if the current park board that we have didn't have the finances and Old Mission just had the one, they might be able to speed up the development of that for use by having more money to put in it quicker. And I've not heard anything back yet from the supervisor in terms of their interest level.
Okay, I want to make it
Yes, sir.
official.
Yes.
I'm not saying I want to do it. I just want to look at this stuff,
Thank you.
okay, for the public and the newspaper.
And that would be another one that the Parks Commission would have to approve.
Sure.
Because they have custody and control?
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Tell us about Maple Bay Park.
Well, Maple Bay is kind of like the Civic Center, except it's obviously it's substantial different in terms of, there was an acquisition grant from the Michigan Natural Resources Trust Fund for almost $7 million. There was also a match provided by the community at about $3 million for that acquisition grant. It has the same restrictions in terms of that there would have to be a conversion. This one, I highly doubt it. I mean, it has 2,500 feet of Great Lakes shoreline. The recreational value of that for the DNR, I mean, unless...
The chances of finding a comparable property are...
is quite unique.
Okay.
I will say, add a comment here, though, is that in some of these properties, like going back to the Twin Lakes one, there were some other grants that were used for these properties, not necessarily governmental grants, but private donations as well as foundations and so forth. We didn't get into those in terms of if there was any restrictions, but certainly those are indicators that from the community and those other sources, those nonprofits, foundations, or whatever, that they entrusted the county to maintain these properties for recreational use. So that's a whole nother aspect when we're looking particularly at the park properties to consider. I would say, though, that when there's these discussions about ownership, whether it's ownership of the Civic Center, Twin Lakes, Maple Bay, Power Island, or whatever, that this, if that were to be pursued, what I would recommend is really stepping back and looking at a bigger strategy as opposed to just trying to, because I do think there has the potential to be savings by the county to, if it were not having ownership of these properties, but maybe if there were in some type of authority or if there was transfer to these other entities. But I think it needs to be thought of from the county from a more of a strategic standpoint as opposed to kind of approaching one of these at an individual basis to the different entities. It's just a recommendation.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on Maple Bay? Okay, so then number 4, you have a list of all the properties. Are there any, I'll just ask this, are there any properties that are on this list that are unencumbered, that are easy to sell, that are just sitting there doing absolutely nothing?
Well,
Please say yes, that there's got to be some.
Well, quite honestly, no. I mean, the ones that were identified, the Whitewater property,
That's gone.
the Keystone property, and
That's-
then the one
yeah.
on Cass were those that were identified. Now, I know the only one that's listed, was listed, and obviously was with issue with the Parks Commission, was the Keystone.
Right.
There still remains the one on Cass. It's not listed. I think there's probably concern that of its issue in terms of related to the Hartman-Hammond Bridge, which is probably why we're holding it.
Okay.
But we haven't really delved into these other ones, but I will tell you that just going through them and identifying, they're usually some type of encumbrance. Most of them tend to be park properties. There could be little pieces here and there, but nothing that really stands out. I don't think the county really has a lot of surplus properties out there. But I do think in terms of some of the ownership issues that we talked about, I think there may be some opportunities in terms of how you handle properties versus, disposing of them through a sale, a transaction like that.
Okay. Yes, Bob?
I guess I thought I had seen a for sale sign at the former health services building on Garfield. Are we trying to move that one, is that?
That's the
you have a
PACE
lease
program
with
has leased that.
Pavilions
The
for
part of the
PACE program.
pavilions.
It was for sale.
Yes. it was
But now
for
they've
sale.
leased it from us.
That's a
It was supposed to
20-year
sell
lease, I
one.
think?
Oh,
20-year.
okay.
Yeah. Tom?
So what happened to the listing for the Keystone property? Did that listing get withdrawn, or is it still showing as listed?
I don't know, I'd have to check on that.
Oh, because when we had the opportunity to,
Is it still listed?
get three
It is still
signatures to put it on the agenda, I didn't sign, but I thought about it, and I hoped that maybe we could discuss, and the public would have an opportunity to discuss, the reasons for not selling that property or selling that property, and that could be revisited with.
I do have that I'd like to get 3 signatures on tonight so we can get it on the July 19th meeting, so.
Can we not discuss it until that happens?
I don't think there's anything wrong with you discussing
You
it.
can,
Okay.
you can discuss it. I mean,
I mean, it still kind of falls into this anyway, right?
Yeah, I thought
it does, and it
because
falls under,
it's part of this memo, I thought we could discuss it.
that it is under the custody, currently, right now, under the custody and control of the Parks Commission.
Yeah. What are
Of
the
the Parks and
benefits and what are the, drawbacks of,
You might get Mr. Roth back to the podium, maybe.
yeah.
What are the benefits of can you tell us, let's start with, John, why don't you tell us why, from the parks point of view, why that was done?
Sure, absolutely. Well, let me reverse back to a year ago when we actually agreed to put it up for sale at that time. The understanding was we were going to make a significant effort towards the pension for the county. Once that was done very reluctantly. No one said, yay, sell that property, Keystone. It was done reluctantly. We thought we could help the county. As we saw the offers start coming in at less than what we considered market value, very concerning. It's in our master plan. Many options for that property. The initial one was baseball fields. We were going to do multiple baseball fields on that property, potentially changing the arrangement at the Civic Center. But now we've also heard from rugby groups, the soccer group, T-Bays thought maybe more fields there. It matches up so good with that property at T-Bays now, it just made sense. And there's also the problem with the zoning in Garfield Township. It's zoned recreational, so whoever buys that's going to have to go to the Garfield Township Board and get it changed. It fits in very well with our master plan with not knowing what other things are going to happen in the county of properties, Civic Center, other things. This could be very valuable to us. So we were very concerned about it being just thrown away in a fire sale, and unfortunately we saw it as that. Now I know it's not the intention of the board to blow everything up, but we saw it as too low a price for what we had potentially in it. Mr. Young, sorry.
Go ahead.
Well, how long have you had the property?
I don't know, Chris, do you know when we actually got in?
No, not off the top of my head, no.
I mean,
It's been quite a while.
my thought would be, if anybody was going to use it, T-Bays would have already expanded upon it. Other than that, everything else has been a pipe dream.
Yep.
And I haven't had time to watch the tape of the meeting, but from what I read in the paper, I know with Merrick's, thinking that that's worth $1 million, $1.5 million, there's no way.
No, I never saw that.
We had it appraised, that's the value of the property.
Yeah.
Even what we were getting will still make some inroads into the unfunded pension.
Right.
To me, I hate to say it, but it felt like somebody's feelings got hurt, that we were looking at all this other stuff, and then it got pulled. That's the impression. Again, I haven't watched the meeting, so that's just my initial feeling of it. It was that.
Really not the case, Commissioner. There certainly wasn't any negative talk towards the commission on that.
Just for me, right?
Just Bob. No, we were thinking.
John and I go way back.
I'm thinking of you, baseball fields, right? Not at all. It was brought up by your county commissioner, Ms. Laura Follett, and she asked us what was that property initially planned for. It is in our master plan, so we did start talking about what the desire was. Now, part of the reason of giving it up was we didn't think we could do anything probably in 10 years. After 10 years, if our pension's starting to go down where it should be, then we would definitely want to do something there at that facility. There's no question about it. There's been multiple groups that have come forward to us looking to do an indoor venue. Multiple groups. Now, a lot of those have been pipe dreams, obviously. One would have blocked out the observatory with all their lights, so we're always cautious about that. But that was a property that, to us, was valuable, and when it was offered back, we jumped on it, I think. And
Well, I guess, again, Commissioner Pollitt's not here to
Yeah.
defend herself, but it sounded like to me like then we had one commissioner that was speaking for the whole board in that manner.
No,
and that
and-
wasn't
yeah.
the feeling,
No,
I
I
know
didn't
for
see
me,
that.
so I was still under the impression we were selling
And
it.
I don't want you to think
And
that,
again, I haven't watched the
Yeah.
video, so
Yeah.
I,
It was not, she just said, I'm nervous about a low bid too, and that, what do you think as a board here? And that was my concern when I gave it up, and I signed off on it. My name's on it to give it back to you guys. And when I signed off, I thought we had a good chance of getting some valuable money, and 300 or 500, I thought it was closer to 6 when we initially gave it up. I thought that was the
well, we had that, we had to get rid of that
Correct.
easement there to.
correct.
Or
And that certainly
T-Bays would
takes
have
it
been
down.
upset.
Certainly takes it down. Well, that also, the easement also gave us pause, because that's T-Bay's property
Yes.
too. So it just fits in, and it fits in our master plan, it definitely does. Maybe
Yeah.
not right away, but
Dan?
How long have we known the potential value of that property? How long?
Well, I'll summarize. We were given the charter a little over a year ago to look at the asset base and find out what we could market, and we came up with 4 properties, which we listed, this was being one of them. And we got an offer on the property. After having it appraised, and Gene Durenzi can speak to this, spent a lot of time making sure that we were getting the right information with the real estate professionals. It eventually resulted in a policy on how to acquire and sell properties, which hadn't existed before. And then we, to be collaborative, understood that there was a need for an ingress and egress, and went back and worked on a solution that would take 8.1% off of the property so that there was a permanent easement getting in and out. Met that. The price came down to $350. Thought we'd done all we possibly could, and then we were blindsided by that action, saying that we weren't going to sell it. So the thing is, every time we come close to doing something, we have 50 people show up and they stop it. You'll never get anything done. So I think we did all we could. Now, if there was a reason and a good rationale for it, which in the master plan, I would say maybe we helped you by scaring you a little. They're going to do is get something going. That's a good thing, But it was done the right way, and some good results in terms of having a policy now on acquisitions and selling of stuff, and transparencies in place. I don't know that what will happen with that. We would have to go back as a board, overturn that, allowing to be put back on the market. I would tell you from a real estate marketing perspective, it probably is tough to market properties for the county now, because people are going to say, I do my due diligence, I put money into it, I make a viable offer based on what it is, and we get down to it, and they don't do it. So, I mean, that's what you have to deal with in terms of reality. I'm not saying good or bad, but that's the situation you're in.
Dan and then Tom.
Well, my question, John, to you is that it's been known for a year what we evaluated this property at, and it's been very transparent. Why would you wait to the last minute to pull it off the market?
we didn't think we had an option, actually. If it wouldn't have been brought back to us by Commissioner Gore Follett.
Well, any one of you could have brought that up and voted on it. Didn't need Gore Follett.
Correct. But
So then
we
my
hadn't even
question
talked
is,
about it.
why did the board wait for a whole year? Wait for a whole year, let us go through all these shenanigans, and then go, oh, we quit?
Again, Commissioner, it was brought to our attention that we had an option. As soon as I signed off on it, I didn't know we had an option. I thought it was gone. But we voiced concern, I voiced concern many times to this commission and to many commissioners one-on-one, that I thought getting a full rate value of that property was important to me. I knew our master plan, I knew this piece of property was very valuable where it was at. So I was always on you guys to be getting a full rate value. Now, whether it was 300 or 600, didn't matter as long as it was full rate. Now, we portioning off things, finding different things with it. When it was offered to us that we had a choice in it, the board was a consensus, 9-0 to get that property back. So the timing, could we have done it earlier? If we'd known, I think many of us would have. We voiced it we voiced that in our park board meetings for many months. Are we going to get a full, good value on this property? Or are we going to carve it down to where 300,000, 350, is that more valuable than possibly baseball fields in the future? I don't know.
Basically, we were right where we were before,
Correct.
and as Dr. Phil said, how's that been working for you? Not real well, has it? Here we are.
Tom?
Yeah, I just want to clarify that it was the board that was assembled for the county commission, in 2016 that decided to list properties, and then it became not until 2017 that the listings actually appeared, right, I think? And so the listing for Keystone and Sand Lakes Road property didn't actually show up publicly until
Gene would-
2017.
Gene would know the exact
Yeah.
date for that, Commissioner. if you
But then
didn't know.
the other question is, you mentioned,
Signed off in like December of
Yeah.
last year, if I'm not mistaken.
December of
Of 16.
16.
so, the idea was for the previous board, the listing actually took place during this board, even though it was very
Correct.
beginning. But you just mentioned, did you say 4 properties were listed? Because I could,
We
They were
had 4 properties.
Identified as
And
possibilities.
as possibilities.
but
we
they
had
weren't
4.
listed, just 2 were listed, right?
Just 2.
But the 2 that has come is the 2, this one and the one we just agreed to sell.
Right, okay,
160, yeah.
just so I understand.
Yeah.
Okay. You want that? Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
May I say just
Okay.
one more comment?
Yes.
Madam Chair, I don't think there was anything Machiavellian or attempting to go around anybody. I think, but it would have been a lot better if there was some previous warning and someone from administration, for example, could have come to the board meeting and shared our point of view on that topic. But I think it just was an idea that came up, and as John said, they weren't sure they had the option. They did, so they took it. So I don't take any offense at that, but it would have been, in the future, if there are those things, we should be talking about them and get both points of view, and that way you make a better decision when you've got the pro and con to it.
Did John have another comment?
Address that real quick.
Yes.
Absolutely, Tom. It wasn't the best motion made in the world, because when we did it, we weren't even sure we were doing it right for that meeting.
I understand.
So you are correct, huh? It was probably not done the best procedural way possible, and it wasn't meant to slap this board in any way,
No, I don't think
other
it's
than Bob
taken-
Johnson. But he deserves it.
Probably do.
And in that spirit, I believe Mr. Merrick would like to make a public comment on this, and I will let him do so.
Thank you.
Oh, no.
But time him for 3 minutes.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. You get 3.
First of all, I want to say, it was brought to our attention, we had on our agenda discussion of possible property sales. So it wasn't a surprise that we were going to discuss property sales. One of the commissioners from your board came and said this was going to happen today, that you were going to discuss the closing of the sale on today. And we didn't have a lot of time to discuss it. We had no idea prior to this that we could possibly rescind that previous offer. I may have pipe dreams of what that property's worth. I've had people tell me I'm way off. I've had other people say I'm way off, both directions. But I think to the recreational value of the community, we have an obligation to look at and make sure that T-Bays, the rugby teams, anyone else who wants to look at that, know that that is still an option, but they better get going on this if they want to do something quickly. Because I have no problem giving it back to the county to sell if no one's going to use it. But the whole thing, I just didn't like the way it came to our board, that we had to act now. I wish we had known earlier that we could have done this. I apologize to the board, I apologize to administration that I made the motion in haste, because I want to make sure that once we sold it, we can't get it back. It's no longer ours, it belongs to someone else. I just believe that we need to make sure that we use that for recreational purposes as it was originally designed in the Parks and Rec plan, master plan, because that's what I'm tasked as a board member to try to follow.
We still like you.
I hope that clears up a little bit. I respect the heck out of you, Tom. I might not always like what you do, but I respect the heck out of you. You've been put in a tough position, and you're doing a good job of trying to fight out. And your board, you guys have done a great job of slowly picking away. But the press and the media and the talk and that you guys are getting, you ask a question, and all of a sudden you're going to do that. I feel sorry for you guys. I've made some decisions that I've got some grief on. That's part of what we do when we sit in that chair. Johnson, you deserve a lot more grief than you get, sir.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes, you're done. Okay. Do we have any more discussion on the properties and the information that we learned today? Bob?
Thank you. This was a
Yes.
great document.
Thank you.
It was really, it was awesome to see some of this history and what, we can't do. Basically, we can't do anything, which we're good at that. We're procrastinators. So. But it was a good document. I know you spent a lot of time on it, but it was real nice to see this all in one.
I would just add, in building on your comments, that, yes, I very much appreciate John and Chris, and I would like to give both of them credit for doing that, and thank John going forward for keeping this up on a regular basis so we don't have to go through this hours and hours, which should have been done a long time ago. It's just an example of all of a sudden seeing a need, but if we did this every year, making sure it's updated, current, even doing the evaluations, I mean, it would be at your fingertips if you want to make a decision. Quickly, it's there. So we've got the hard work done now. Let's not let it slip through the cracks. Keep it updated on an annual basis.
Absolutely.
Okay.
We'll do
Now-
that.
Thank you, council.
Yes.
A lot of work, yeah.
Yeah.
I would say
Thank you.
before we move on from this, after we've heard all of this, all the possibilities, which there are none, kind of, does anybody and the public have anything to say? Because I said I would, yes, Ryan. I said I would open it up, and that's what I'm doing. You can tell us who you are.
My name is Ryan Walsh. I'm the office manager in Parks and Rec. And I just wanted to brush up on a few things about the Bermley property. I know it's discouraging to have it kind of go back a step backwards, but let us kind of work with it, and we'll make the best out of the situation. I think the T-Base group was kind of left out of some of these conversations, and their contract with us is going to be ending here in the next couple of years, and that could be a bargaining tool to because I know they want to use that property. They had tentative plans that were made, I think, in 2015 for that, and I think it was there was an RFP done for that where Center Ice showed interest in that property, and there's a lot of people who have an interest in that property. So I think there's potential to use that property, and if it doesn't work out, it can be, reconsidered to sell again.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
Hi, Sarah. Dave Petrov, 9988 Riley Road, Interlochen. I'm just disappointed. We're doing all these things here to try and come up with money to make up for debts that were, signed up for by previous commissions and things of that nature. Money that's owed to people who have worked here and things like that, and they've got a retirement and stuff like that, and because of the economy and stuff, I know that the payout is not what it should be. And now we're talking having a fire sale on property that I know from experience that when it comes to government buying land, they usually pay 3 or 4 times what it's worth, and when they want to sell it, they're selling it for a half or fourth what it's worth. It doesn't make sense. When you're going to give away something like this is not your land, this is our land. These are our pavilions. These are ours. They're ours. We're the ones who've put out the taxes that have paid for it and provided it. And okay, so you got a debt. We paid for it once, but if it's going to be sold, especially going to be sold dirt cheap, why don't you offer it for sale to us? That's what a millage would be in this case. I know we paid for it once, but put out a millage there. Half a mil would get us a whole lot more than $500,000. And guess what? We would still own it. We could still have parks and all the other things, and we would be looking towards having a better future. That's what I kind of think. We're not going to get rid of this land and leave, are we? I mean, that's what you do if you're selling your house when you have to, or your business or something. We're not. We're going to be here. We want to have this. We want to have it for us, for our kids, our grandkids. And it means a lot to, for our own personal use, and it also means a lot for, the tourist business and things like that, but it means a lot. And so we should be the first people that this is offered to. Offer it to us. I guess if we turn down a millage, then we're not buying the land, and then you can have your fire sale. But that's wrong. We should do it first. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else have anything to say on the properties and what we learned today? Okay. Tom, did you have one more comment or no?
Oh, I don't know if it's a good idea or not, but if we took, John, if we took our list of all the property that we have insured, look at how the insurance is on all these pieces of property, and just make sure that that's up to date. Now that we have this list, we could compare it to the list of property that's insured and maybe evaluate whether insurance is at the right amount.
Yeah, and I'm not, that would be something that administration and the finance department would be covering. I think what our interest was, it's not so much that we didn't have these lists, it's about understanding what the issues are related to all these properties and getting the history involved in all that. But I'm sure that finance department has that all.
Yeah, I was just thinking of comparing the two things.
Correct. And we are, there's other things, I think one of the things you should be looking at too is how we maintain these properties, the cost of them. So we are looking at properties that we may lease or maintain that maybe we don't even have ownership in, and those types of things are also what we're looking at as well.
Okay. Thank you very much. We have number 10, against my better judgment. Let's start with and I don't know, we are into old unfinished business, the pension stabilization plan, and I don't know that we need to talk about these things in order. We have options. We already, in my opinion, we took the biggest option already 2 weeks ago, which was to take MERS's offer of the 16 years at a level payment of $5.9 million. I guess other things to consider would be, do we want to bond any portion of this to get our funding level a little higher, a little quicker? Do we want to put it out to the voters for a millage to get a little help with paying the payments? And what do we do with the OPEB liability? And then what do we do with the pension board? So those are the essential questions that we can just sort of, let's have a little free chat and then see what happens.
I just
Yes, Dan.
On number 4, I'd like to change that a little bit by one word.
What does it say?
Well, it says bond counsel and financial advisor through an RFP to, and put in the word explore the issue.
Got it.
Because if we pass it as it is, that means we're going to do it.
Right, so we like I said, we'll just kind of talk about how we might want to structure some of these things, and these are just sort of a guideline as to what we might want to talk about in the whole discussion.
All right.
So, yes, if that would be something that we would say, for instance, should we, I know it was floated in our last meeting that maybe we should bond out the lowest funded unit in order to, and so if we could have if someone would make a motion that says, shall the board direct staff to proceed in the exploration of doing that?
Okay.
Is that what you, yeah. So we'll, and then if we talk about millage, how much, how many years, how would that be structured? And so let's Free association, Tom and then Bob.
Okay, I'm going to just read through 10 points that I think...
Is that, did you
yeah.
gave us this one? Because I was going to
Yeah.
ask where these came from.
I'm just going to read them because I just want to see if I'm correct, because no matter how you fund the unfunded amount of pension, these are reasons why you would do it. I believe the number one reason is the county can't afford to make payments to MERS that will climb as high as $9 million in a given year.
But we already got rid of that one.
Before decreasing.
We already got rid of that, though.
Well, I haven't seen a new figure, just because...
$5.9 million every year for 16 years is what we agreed to 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
So that number one reason, we already took care of that.
okay. That doesn't seem like that is a certainty to me, because
No, that's what MERS agreed to, $5.9 million.
it doesn't take into effect any changes in the market, so...
But what, may I?
Tony, or Tom?
We were going to make, and we're working with the county treasurer, when we would make the $5.6 million payment, which would then give us a 16-year amortization schedule at 5.9. There's nothing that you can do, Commissioner Mayor, to say, are we going to have a recession? Is the 7.75 discount rate going away? That's the unpredictability of it.
Right.
The reason we want to set up additional funding vehicles is to stabilize that 5.9, and if there is volatility, then we would draw from this other fund in a very conservative investment portfolio to make sure we can continue the 5.9.
Right. Well, I'll finish the list, but I think what I did not realize that point, that this could never happen because of changing the amortization schedule and increasing it from 12 to 16 years. I didn't realize that we could not still climb to a high figure, so I'll take that one out. But if we bonded, and we bonded for the amount of the amortization period, which would be 16 years, I think the annual amount that we'd be sending MERS would be somewhere around $3 million instead of somewhere around $5 million.
No, we still have to pay MERS the $5.9 million, but the amount, then we would also, it would depend on how much we bonded out for.
Right.
And then that, yeah.
Okay.
But then we would have the additional bond payment in addition to what we are paying MERS.
I agree.
Okay.
But I think the amount could come down below 5 into the 3 million range, so. So the other thing is facing mounting debt and increasing annual payments. Now, we're saying that this is not going to happen, that we're going to have a steady payment because of what we've done? This is somewhat guaranteed?
Yes.
Okay. Well, when we talk about how much we want to fund it, where we're at now is somewhere around 42 to 45. That is considered low. 60% might be fair. 80% is good. We don't have to go up to 100%. I'm totally fine with having less than 100% funding. But what it would do is these level payments that we're talking about, however we arrive at them, will be so much an improvement over how we're budgeting right now, and any fear of any large payments in the future. The averaging out of those payments to a lower amount, whether it be in the $3 million or $5 million range, is definitely a top reason for funding the pension debt and not just leaving it the way that it is. A good fund balance is also going to affect the confidence that the employees have who have not yet retired, and security for those who have retired, which is the human factor. We'll be able to avoid any negative attention from the state government if they change the law to say that we get some kind of counseling from the state treasurer if you're funded too low. We can avoid that, even though that has not become law yet. Now is still a good time to take advantage of historically low interest rates on bonds and other types of financing, and that this current law, Public Act 329, allows us to do that and sets up rules and regulations to make it a safe and, I would say not a very risky endeavor. We can turn around this debt crisis that at some point affected everything, including that the commissioners get only $1 per year in compensation, which I do not agree with, and that the whole Grand Traverse County image in this community can be bettered by financing this up to whatever you're comfortable with at whatever level, whether it be 70 or 80%, but still I don't think we need to go to the 100% level. The longer we wait to make a decision, it will cost the county money, as it has since a bonding proposal was drafted and proposed back in 2013, depending on how you add up all the lost opportunity, it's a substantial amount of money, and we can't go back and change that, but it has affected the county considerably, has caused us to cut back on some services. Animal control is definitely one of those, and I really think that we need to make a decision that will affect this year's budget, if possible, and not do something that's not going to affect this year's budget at all, and not, presumably affect anything until sometime in middle or late 2018, depending on the choices that we make. So, I think that there's also a possibility that we can amend Public Act 329 so that the Michigan legislature can amend it to make it so that we can set up a trust with money from bonding or other sources that is not managed by MERS, and have that choice to decide whether we want them to manage our money or not manage our money. But I believe that would require an amendment to the Public Act 329, which I do believe is conceivable. So if we did propose bonding, I would say that I would even be comfortable saying contingent upon changing the statute to allow for us to have the choice on who would handle the money that we raise to raise our funding portion, understanding that if it's not with MERS, that it would show up on our balance sheet correctly, but it would not show up on our MERS account correctly necessarily if we did not have MERS managing the money. So.
Dan?
Okay, I'm going to I'm tired of all this talk. I want to make a motion that...
I want to ask council, if say for instance, I'm dead set against it. If I made the initial motion, does that mean I have to support it?
No.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
But I have a question too. If something is voted on today and is voted down, can it be brought back and asked for again?
Yeah, I mean, the two common ways are to reconsider the matter or to rescind something previously adopted, which this board has used those type of motions before in the past.
Okay. I make a motion that the county does not use a bond to manage the retirement debt.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Johnson. Further discussion? Bob, and then Rob.
I'm gonna be nice today. Trying to make sure I word it correctly because I don't want to sound mean, but for all the research you have done, you're under the impression that if we bond, there is no risk whatsoever, and that is farthest from the truth. If, say for instance, you're able to get the legislature to make an amendment to that, then we have two financial vehicles that we're managing, and you have to make returns on both then, right? Otherwise, you're going to get in the hole. We're at record levels right now with the market, so a 10-20% correction is not inconceivable in the next 5 to 10 years. I just think we're throwing money, trying to finance this, and it is not like refinancing a house or a mortgage. It still has a lot of risk involved with it, and I just don't think you fully understand the risk that's there. It's not, once we bond, we're done with it. There is constant risk. This type of action has brought down communities and cities that are probably were better off financially than we are right now. Everything you go read and research will tell you, do not do this when you are in this kind of financial situation. So, I fully support not going for bonding. Like, that's a big shocker for everybody, but I just think it adds too much more risk to that right now. Because either way we go, just stick with the amortization at 16 years. Yes, we're trying to cap that that money that we're paying every year, but it is still market-based. You know, we'll pay that money, then we might gain ground, might lose ground, but we'll do the same thing if we put that money for a bond in another fund and still made payments. I don't see where we're gaining any ground, so.
Ron?
Those who believe that bonding is the answer, I would suggest that if they really felt that that's what we should do, they first should look at their own house finances, and if they are struggling paying for all of their toys, extra stuff, and making their house payment, take a second mortgage out, take it and invest it in the stock market, and that investment may make your initial payment of your second mortgage, but then it'll offset your payments on your toys and boats, snowmobiles. That's how I see it. In business, we had to make tough decisions. It's not a tough time right now. This is a great time to be looking for a job, looking for work. If you're a contractor, road building, it's a great time. There's money being made. This is not a time when we should be, there never will be a time when I feel like we should be asking the people for more money, which is what we would be doing if we bonded. We would be putting the finances on the line. We've not even looked at our mandated services compared to the services we provide and what level of service we really need to provide, or what the people really want. You know, animal control, sure. You know, that's people control, it's not animal control. That's the problem. People control, that's the sheriff's department. Animals will take care of themselves. I will not support a bond, and I will not support a millage either.
I have a couple questions first. Let me ask about Dan's motion. So he's moving that we not do something, that we not. So let me ask Dan first. So are you motioning that we don't pursue any kind of bonding?
Yes.
Okay. Does there have to be a time period on that? Would that be in perpetuity? We can't bring it up for how long? It seems ambiguous.
I don't know if Commissioner Lathrop can offer any type of clarify or qualifier.
What did you say? 16 years.
That's a good question.
I'm just asking. It seems
Yeah.
like, is it in perpetuity, or are you saying that we,
Kind of like the
how about,
Parks Board.
are you saying that we
Well,
don't do
let's put
anything?
it this
You're
way.
saying you don't want us to, you want to see how the MERS thing plays out? How did you don't want?
Let's put it this way, that
Okay.
if I'd said 10 years, next year's board could change that,
Well,
right?
yeah.
Okay, so I don't want to be it for 6 months, so let's make it 10 years. All right?
You know, if I could throw out there one.
Or not at this time, or I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, one way to basically kill something for now would be to postpone something indefinitely, to table it indefinitely.
Table bonding indefinitely.
No. I want this board to decide against bonding or vote for bonding. My intent of my motion was to make that happen. So,
Make it not happen.
well, make it not happen then, okay? And then I don't know how to answer the amount of time it's going to be. But I don't want to make it look like we've tabled it. I want to either defeat it or vote it in.
Tom?
Well, another way of looking at tabling it is to wait till we have a full board present to get the other two opinions. That would be fair to everybody, I believe. And as far as Commissioner Johnson's comments, I mean, I do believe in my heart of hearts, with no benefit to myself personally at all, that bonding is probably the single only way to move forward and secure this county and not be in a debt crisis, especially if you don't want to have a millage and there's limited opportunities to sell property. All you're left with is cutting services, and I really don't think the public is going to support that. I mean, you can cut some services, but I don't think you can ever reach the degree that you need to reach without a big influx of cash. And the only way you can get cash up front to be able to use and earn money, which is what MERS does essentially, is it earns you money in addition to securing payments for your retirees. But I just think for me, it's just wrong to infer that it's dangerous. I just don't see it at all. The stock market may be dangerous, but the bond market is not. That's why so many government bodies use bonds. It's a textbook example of safety, and it's proven academically. I believe so. I believe what I've read. But when you cite that if there's problems with people who've bonded and it's created calamities and things like that, you really need to have specific examples, what damage occurred when and where and all that. And I would guess that most of the damage that you're aware of happened outside the state of Michigan, and they didn't have the same rules and regulations. They might not have even required that the pension bond proceeds be invested safely with the pension plan provider, which in our case is MERS. If they invested it on their own, there's no comparison to giving it to a group that is more conservative than the 100 or so options that somebody would have investing it on their own, that didn't have a state law, Public Act 329, to give guidance as to how to manage the money. That's what this Public Act stands for. And I don't believe that there's calamities that occurred in the state of Michigan since 2012 when this Public Act came into being as a law. I don't believe it exists. There might have been a couple of tumbles. I believe that Saginaw had some, and it was largely because they were the first, and that I think MERS reevaluated what the funding portion had to be, so they had to add more money because they didn't have the timing, and MERS changed the formula. But I think Saginaw is perfectly okay today, and they're sort of like the poster child for maybe hitting a couple of bumps in the road and also being the first. And I also went and contacted our bank. We have the Fifth Third Bank as the bank that Grand Traverse County banks with. They're our experts in the securities department, and I believe they handled 14 of 18 bonding offers with different municipalities in the state of Michigan. All, I believe, are successful, and that the difference, the ones that they didn't handle might have been handled by John Axe or some other firm. But there's not too many people in the state of Michigan that have the expertise of our own bond counsel, who is John Axe, who goes back 4 administrators, over 25 years. We've been accepting his advice as good advice, and I believe it is good advice. But I do think you need to talk to one or more people when you get advice, and that's why I've sought expert advice from more than one person to get my own opinion formed. And that's why I contacted our bank, the Fifth Third Bank. And I do believe that they are experts and that they would treat us right. They are our bankers. Thank you.
Dan?
Okay, I'm going to step aside from the timing thing for a second. I want to speak as to why I don't want to do a bond.
Go.
Okay.
Yep.
I think it's a stealth tax. I think it's, if we were to bond, for instance, the whole amount, every man, woman, and child in Grand Traverse County would have to pay a portion of this for the next 20 years. I don't like it. I think that if this type of debt is going to be, if we were willing and felt it was necessary to go to the public for a millage, which is cheaper than a bond. Why would we not go to the public for a bond? I just don't think, now let me finish.
No, I'm just getting in line.
All right.
I'm next, and then Tom.
And so I don't like the idea. I think it's a stealth tax. And if it does pass, I'll be one of the people knocking on doors to get a petition to bring it to the public. This is too big. Okay. The next thing is, this board has not, this new board has not done one thing to change structurally our cost problems in this county. Not one thing. We're going to bond, we're going to do a millage, but we haven't done anything to see how we can cut costs and then take those proceeds and help manage our debt better. That's what we do in our house. I'd sell my extra car. I would do what I had to do rather than take my credit card and invest it in the stock market. All right? And lastly, the bonds, we're forgetting about the cost. I think that depending on how you look at it, if it costs, if we owe $50 million or $70 million, it's arguable. It could be one or the other. We're looking at $23, $26 million of interest, not to mention the cost of paying John Axe. And by the way, calling him a bond counsel, it's respectful. He's a bond salesman. He makes a lot of money on it, and so do other members of his family. So it makes me a little suspicious of his advice. So those are the things. It's a stealth tax. We haven't even begun to try to lower our costs, except for what Tom administration has done this last year, which has been substantial, but this board has not supported that. And then lastly, the immense cost of the interest on something like this. So those are the reasons.
Okay. I'm going to talk and then I'll open it back up. I'm going to vote no, but here's why. Not because I don't necessarily agree. I really think the whole board should be here. So there's my little protest like Sonny does as far as I'm going to vote no here. Here's why. But also, I have a lot of reservations about bonding. They revolve around the fact that who we have for bond counsel and how we structure it doesn't have as much to do with the success as the market. The market determines whether or not we are successful in bonding out all or part of this obligation. And you can say, well, this county did it and it was very successful, and this county did it at a different time period and it wasn't successful for them. There's no way to pinpoint exactly what were the things that made it successful and what weren't. And it really does have to do with market conditions. And you can look back and say, had we done it in 2013, it would have been great, and look at all of the benefit that we lost. But that's all hindsight. There's no way to predict the future on that. None. And I am not for borrowing money to invest it in our own funds that wouldn't even count toward our funding percentage. Only contributions to MERS count toward our funding percentage. If we put it in our own irrevocable trust and invest it on our own, that's very risky, and it doesn't count toward our funding percentage at all. I honestly don't, with all due respect, I don't think that anybody looks at our funding percentage and has an opinion on our image as a county. A lot of people don't even know what that, it reflects poorly on financial management in the past. I do think that having a higher funding percentage would help our employees feel at ease that they are going to get the retirement that they're promised, but that's constitutionally guaranteed no matter what. So I'm back and forth on all this stuff. I'm definitely against bonding out for the entire amount. I think that I wish we could leave open the possibility of of bonding for a smaller amount, for, to get our funding level up to a certain point, although nobody can tell me really, except for the threat of legislation saying that we are going to be kind of picked on by the Treasury at certain funding levels, nobody can really tell me what that does. If today we are 40% funded and we bond and then we are 70% funded, honestly, whose lives change? Nobody can tell me. What is the great big advantage to having this thing highly funded right away? I guess I just believe that slow and steady wins the race. So I'm going to vote no, just because I think everybody should be here and because I think we should leave our options a little bit more open than no bonding ever at all. Ron?
I just want to make the point that you cannot borrow your way out of debt without increasing your income or changing your expenses. It's impossible to borrow your way out. And that's what I feel bonding is going to be, borrowing your way out of a debt situation.
Yeah, and we were 100% funded at one time. I mean, through market conditions. Yeah, you can say, well, that was a fluke, but I don't think it really was that big a fluke. I mean, you could have several years of downturns like that, and so then you would still have to make that up in addition to the bonds and everything else. So I think the past track record of it really is leery to me. So.
I think, I just, one more thing is I think that it's a shame to cut it off completely. A preferable thing for me would be just to not, just don't pursue it at this time.
Well, how about,
If things, I would like to leave if we can say just that we're not going to pursue it at this time.
how about if,
I hate to close the door.
okay,
I really do.
I can amend my motion, right?
You can.
Okay, so how about, and I'm willing to talk about this, how about, when is this board done with? What year? Is this?
The end of 18.
Yeah, how about until then?
Well, I'm still going to vote yes, but
What do you think?
Can I just add that
go ahead.
you're talking, if you don't do it this year, quite frankly, you've missed the boat. If you do it with 14 years or 13 years
I didn't want to close
left
off
of
the
the
possibility of,
amortization, you've gained nothing whatsoever.
I didn't
So-
want to close off the possibility of bonding a portion of it.
And no matter what you put in the motion, if it
I
gets
know.
revisited, it gets overturned anyway. So I would just leave it as...
Leave it.
Leave it as is. Okay,
Okay.
sweet and simple.
Tom?
Well, I'd just
And then
like to
we're gonna vote.
clarify that if the bonding procedure began and we announced that we were going to have an intent to issue bonds, and we would discuss at what level, some kind of compromise to get us out of the 40 percentile would be wise, I believe. But part of the process calls for the public to have an opportunity to have a referendum, and that's how it ends up on the ballot. It's not that we put it on the ballot to get the approval. The
Right.
public decides whether they want to do a referendum to get the vote from the public as to whether the public wants it or not.
I'm aware of that.
So that's not such a bad idea, because we're not asking the public directly to sign in as to what their feelings are, plus or minus this idea, whereas we would have to, straightforward, if we did a millage, that's straightforward, goes to a vote. The public has to decide. And I think it would be wise for them to come in on this, that if we started the process and we were just going to bond up to like 70% or 80%, but surely not up to the 100% level, the difference is part of what you're worried about, is, spending money that you think you're chasing something and you're never going to get caught up, basically, is what you're worried about. And, let the public have their opportunity to voice their own feelings, and if there were a referendum, they'd be able to.
I'm aware of what you're saying, I knew that already, and I'm just saying that if this board passes that and decides to pursue bonds, I'll be one of the people getting signatures to take it to the public.
Yeah, well, you're right.
Okay.
Okay, I have two more things. One, I know Commissioner Mayer had said something about helping the budget this year. We did get a schedule, potential schedule that if we did bonding in any form, it really wouldn't happen, it wouldn't be final until next year. So it wouldn't help. It says 17, but it's into next year, that it's quite a lengthy process.
And if there were a referendum, it would delay it.
It would delay it even
Another
further.
period of time.
I have a question for Tony Rajenovich with MERS, if you don't mind.
That's what I'm here for.
Poor Tony.
2 weeks ago, we said that we would give, I believe, $5.6 million sort of down payment, and then this year we would be giving the 5.9 ARC, correct? Or similar to that?
In 2018, we would be getting the 5.9.
Okay, but we are giving them the 5.6 this year.
Correct.
What is the anticipated annual required contribution for this year? And then my follow-up question, if you know that, just even round numbers, making our annual required contribution for this year and the 5.6 million, what does that bring our funding percentage up to? If you,
I don't have the chart in front of me, but
don't.
it's going to bring you
maybe
up
Jody
about...
does. She looks like she might.
Like 50%, I think?
Was it 52? I think it was 52.
Because if our debt is 50 and we pay 10 million in, that's 1/5 of what we owe. So I would think that just looking for what our funding percentage might be at the beginning of next year. I know it also depends on market value.
That's good variables in there.
But yeah,
Good
just
question.
because if we do nothing, how does it raise the funding level, the percentage? If we do just what we agreed to 2 weeks ago, and that's it.
If what you do, you'll start out, you'll get up to, I think it's 50 or 52. Then by the end of that 16 years, if all the assumptions are met, your unfunded liability should be paid off.
Well, I'm looking at what
So that-
what is the progression of how quickly are we getting into the 60%? 60,
It's in
65.
that chart, but,
Yeah.
but again, it's still market-based. I mean,
It is market-based, and we don't know what's going to happen, but I was just,
which is still the same even if we did bonds.
it's all
I think in the last
market-based.
4 years, you really see it escalate because of mortality and then also...
There's more money working for us.
Correct.
Okay.
Can I ask Tony a question?
Sure.
Yeah, what do you think is the number one reason for putting more money into MERS by the end of this year or early next year, however we do it? And what is the benefit of coming up to 60, 70, or even as high as 80% versus not doing something and waiting for the earnings to provide with the increase in value of the fund, just at 6 or 7 or 7.75, if that happens? Eventually you would get up to fully funded just based on your earnings potential, but why would you say it's better or better not to add to something now, by the early part of 2018?
MERS always encourages our employers to pay more than the minimum if they can, because you have to understand how this is set up. The actuarial system is set up on assumptions. We're trying to predict the unknown, the future. So it's a given that these things will happen. We assume they'll happen. Therefore, they always state, the actuaries state, if this happens, therefore this will be the result. So it's the if-then statement. If you put more money in now or sooner, you would have to pay less later. That's the theory.
If you put 5.9 million in, each and
Closer, because I
every
can
year,
hardly hear you.
and nothing happens, if you have a magic wand, and there's no recessions, no up and down, no volatility, 7.7 time consistent return, you pay it off. But we all know it's not realistic. Does anyone in this room think you're not going to have a recession the next 16 years? Of course you are. You develop the best plan with the best flexibility to keep that 5.9 current. That's all you can do. The bonding, you put the money in, it's just as much risk of losing everything. You could put the money in, and then you could have a recession, and you have to pay that back as well. It's very high risk, bonding. I'll say that, very high risk.
Yeah, well...
Do you have
I have plenty of backup to prove it.
a funding percentage for us? This is why Jody comes in with stacks and stacks of papers,
she
because
is.
she
She's-
never knows
she's
what we're
paper.
going to ask. I keep you jumping.
I don't know how you do it.
The answer to your question is if they put in a total of $10.7 million,
Okay,
the funded position will go from, and the way that they do this chart, it says the same, it doesn't change the funded position. And then they start off the next year at the same funded position, 45%. But then you see it jump to 51% right away, because the reason it does this is because they'll show you what the fiscal year ending annual valuation tells you what your required contributions are going to be in 2 years. So the way that the actuaries put this together, it's about a 5 to 6% jump.
okay.
Which, exactly what you said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's about what I said, that we're paying you about, well, we're paying you one-fifth of it. We're actually paying you 20% of, a little less than 20% of what we owe. But yeah, okay.
Can I ask Tony one more question?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, when I spoke to the Fifth Third Bank, they said that they were involved in 14 of 18 deals that were struck here in Michigan with the new Public Act that started in 2012. So I would guess that that all of those 14 that they did, that they feel were fairly successful, that those are probably all MERS clients as well. So you might be able to give us advice from the other side. What happened to the 14 counties that used the Fifth Third Bank to go with this idea, and are they in trouble? I mean, what happened? You don't have to answer it now. You might not have that information, but I think that would be kind of valuable to get it back from MERS. What happened? And I bet you it's not a doomsday story.
I can tell you this, that I'm aware of, I believe there are 10 different bondings with MERS municipalities. And all of those municipalities that bonded took the proceeds from the bond and placed them into the MERS fund, so all of their funded positions went back up. All of those groups that bonded within MERS bonded for actuarial value of assets. And here's a key thing to understand, that when we say that your liability is here, this is the value of the pensions earned, and we say your assets are here. That actuarial port says actuarial value of assets. And in 2008, the actuarial value of assets were overstated by 39%. And since then, we have been slowly bringing that closer to 1 for 1. Right now, after the 2016 valuation, assets are overstated by only 8%. It goes the other way. Back in 2007, assets were understated by a little over 1%. So what happened is when they bonded for actuarial value, market value said they should have bonded for a little bit more. So then what happens is that when we are going through each year's valuation, we're slowly working closer towards market value. Well, we have a smooth actuarial rate of return also, not a market rate of return. And in 2016, we had a market rate of return of 11.10%, but an actuarial smooth value of 5.14. So you only got credited for 5.14% instead of 11.1. But because of all these other, because we've been smoothing, but in 2008, we didn't give you all the losses of 2008. So what if all of these groups that bonded would have been able to bond for market value, that decrease in funded position since bonding would not have been there. If we didn't have, because of smoothing, these are the reasons that you see some of these fund positions going from where they were, from 100% down to something lower. That's the main reason. It's the actuarial calculation, not the market value calculation.
Jody has a comment.
So Tony was kind enough to provide me with some of the funding levels of counties and cities within MERS that have bonded. Not everyone's annual valuation is yet complete, so he provided me with the 2016 ending numbers for 5 of the communities. I know that Commissioner Mayer had mentioned Saginaw County as a wild success for bonding.
I didn't say that.
Well, you, I think, had referred to them as an example of success. They bonded in 2014. The bond amount was $52 million. Their total liability in 2005 was $116 million, and they were 75.6% funded. By 2013, their total liability had grown to $142 million, and their funding percentage had fallen to 61.7%. Again, when they bonded in 2014 for the $52 million, they achieved in that valuation year 97.7% funding. So again, that valuation year ending December 31, 2014, the year that they bonded. The following year, they had fallen to 89.8%. Again, as a result of the experience study and market rate of return. So while they had anticipated achieving fully funding, they, in fact, the very next year had fallen to 89.8%. They're one of the valuations that has yet to be performed. Another significant example is the city of Bloomfield Hills that bonded for $15.86 million in 2015. At the time that they bonded in, looks like 2013 was the last valuation prior to the bonding, they were 49.7% funded. They bonded again for that $15.8 million and achieved 100% funding. So it looks like their valuation went ahead, and even though issued in 2015, it included in their 2014 year end, so they reported 100% funded. In 2015, they were at 92.2% funded, and in 2016 had fallen to 87.
Thank you.
I will let you know that council has, council has let me know that if we take a vote, and the vote is 3-2, that it actually fails.
Yeah, your board rules provide in 11.4 that final passage or adoption of any measure or resolution require a majority vote of members elected and serving.
It's elected and serving. So in order for this to pass, it has to be 4-3, it actually fails.
So take a stand. Seriously. One way or the other.
I'm just letting you know that when they say the measure fails and it comes out 3-2, that is why, because it does take a majority elected and serving. But you could bring it back up,
It'll be brought back up anyway, right?
maybe.
Yeah. I want us to publicly take our stand.
Okay. Sarah, roll call vote, please.
You got it. Klaus?
So I'm voting yes for,
Yes or no?
Yes for no.
Yes for no.
That's what you're
Yes.
voting for. Okay.
yes.
Mayor?
I'm voting against the proposal.
Lathrop?
I'm voting for it.
You guys are making me think. Johnson?
Yes.
Thank you. Crawford?
No.
3-2.
So it fails. Okay. I expect to see, then I will just.
I guess I'm just confused. If you're going to vote no now, and then you're going to vote yes theoretically when everyone's here.
I don't know what the proposal will be when everybody's here. There may be a
Like I said,
different proposal. Okay, so we'll bring that back. Is there any interest in talking about, well, I guess we'll just talk about a millage.
Well, why should we vote on any of this stuff?
If there's, yeah, you're
we're
right.
gonna do this-
Because if there has to be 4. There has to be, that's why I wanted to
So let me ask
postpone
this.
this.
So every time someone is not here now,
No,
I mean, They knew we were having this discussion. They, you know, I made it pretty clear last time that I wanted to put this to
Now, let
bed.
me, just so you know, Sonny was injured
Oh, okay,
at
didn't hear
work,
that.
and Cheryl's daughter is having a C-section is at the hospital. So this is not that they just didn't show up or that they didn't plan on showing up. So just so you know that.
Well, and I assume there was some. I mean, I assume they didn't.
That it was emergencies, and they both really wanted to be here, and, yes. And so that is why I brought it up at the beginning, that things are either going to be like this, 3-2, and require a majority, or they're going to be, even had we had Cheryl, or one or the other, it would have been 3-3, everything would have failed.
Could have been 4-1.
It could have been. It was not.
Yeah, I mean,
So,
I agree.
do we want to postpone the rest of the discussion and put it on July 19th? Or do we want to talk about it a little bit and still bring it back on July 19th?
Well, I guess even talking about the millage, I know the three of us are against the millage. I think you're for a millage.
No.
Okay, so 4 of us against the millage, so,
So that'll have to be brought back up?
no.
Maybe,
If we voted
no.
it now, it would be,
If you voted it now, it would go
I'll make the
down.
motion that we do not approve a millage for the pension liability.
I second it.
Okay. Moved by Commissioner Johnson, seconded by Commissioner Lathrop. Any discussion?
I'm getting a headache.
I am too. This is not the way that I wanted things to happen, and not the preferred way.
Me
like you
either.
said, because everybody isn't here, so. Okay. You can tell us why, again,
I just,
or not?
no, I mean,
Either way.
I just don't think that it's, I think if you go for a millage, voters are soundly going to defeat it and just say, do your job here and do what you're elected to do and make the tough decisions. I mean, when we extended that right now for MERS, everything else being equal, our revenue's increasing somewhat, we're actually in somewhat, we're headed in the right direction, I think. I just don't support going back to the taxpayers again and saying, hey, this board has screwed up over the years, messed up over the years. You know, no one decision that did it, you know. But, so give us another shot of funding it and then losing it all again, so.
I've actually said before that at this time, I don't want to go to the voters and ask them for the millage. Until we have, as Dan has said, really dug in to see what can be done, to see what efficiencies we can find, I think it would stop. I think that there wouldn't be the incentive to do better, I know, it's kind of an austerity measure, and we will be in this austerity measure for a while here to try to constantly do more with less. And so, in the future, that would be out there somewhere, for a future board might say, you know what, we're done with this, we've done all we can. Look to the people,
Yeah, I
we've
mean,
done
you
all we can. I think we should be able to prove to the people that we have done what we can, that we've made strides, that we've done all we can, and now, doggone it, we do need this millage. I think that we should try first with some cost-cutting measures to try to do things more efficiently. So, Tom?
Oh, I don't support a millage, and I just want to make sure that I understand correctly that the millage proposal that came from the Pension Advisory Board was a mill for 7 years. Is that correct?
That's...
Yeah. Well, that would not have fully funded the pension.
No.
And I did read in the
help, but it
Record
wouldn't
Eagle, and the Record Eagle later didn't, they corrected it, not as a correction perhaps, but it got corrected one way or another, that I believe somebody used the word partial the first time it appeared in the paper when they were being quoted, and partial was meant to make people think that it was most, but it wasn't. It was probably closer to about half of what the difference was in the debt. So if we'd have gone forward with that, we would have got up to, you know, half of what we were short, the millage would have covered, but it only would have come in increments, you know, over 7 years. So it wouldn't have been upfront money.
It wouldn't be upfront money. It never was. And when I was
Right.
with the pension board and
Yeah.
they were discussing that, it wasn't to
That's
fully
right.
fund it all at once. It
Yeah.
was, it would have still been slow and steady wins
That's
the
right.
race on that.
So the benefit of the value of money, the more money that you pay up front, the sooner the better, the higher your earnings are potentially. You surely can't get higher earnings by doing nothing. And the market's going to have its effect on whatever portion of funding we have, almost an equal effect in a way, because if you only get up to 50% and the market turns around, it's going to be just as bad as if it's funded higher to 60 or 70. You're still going to lose the same percentage. You are at the whim of the market, but if we could take more time and all have a good class, which we don't have time for, I think everybody would learn that bonding is not a risky investment compared to other types of investing. And that is why a lot of municipalities use bonding, because it is very low risk. High risk, these types of exaggerations just do not apply academically to the real world.
I thought we were talking about millage.
Okay, so hold on, Jody needs to talk.
So I will help to administer whatever should be the action of the board. So should the action decide to pursue bonding, my role as the finance director for the county is to ensure that you make an informed decision and that we carry it out in the best possible way to the advantage of the county. However, I need to clarify that Public Act 329 does not provide safeguards to the risk that is inherent to pension obligation bonds. It simply is enabling legislation that authorizes a local unit of government to issue pension obligation bonds and bonding for funding retiree health care. The GFOA, the Government Finance Officers Association, was founded, I'm reading off of the website, so that the public understands the reason why the GFOA is important. They were funded in 1906. They represent public finance officials throughout the United States and Canada. The association's more than 19,000 members are federal, state, and local finance officials deeply involved in planning, financing, and implementing thousands of governmental operations in each of their jurisdictions. GFOA's mission is to promote excellence in state and local government financial management. GFOA has accepted the leadership challenge of public finance. To meet the many needs of its members, the organization provides best practice guidance, consulting, networking opportunities, publications, including books, ebooks, periodicals, recognition programs, research, and training opportunities for those in the profession. They are who everyone in municipal finance looks to for best practices.
And what do they say?
In a practical purpose beyond GASB as the authority on reporting. They state in their advisory publication regarding pension obligation bonds, ultimately I'll just skip to the recommendation, that the Government Finance Officers Association recommends that state and local governments do not issue POBs for the following reasons. And then it lists 5 reasons. I don't know if you would like me to read those into the record, but I think that it is important to note that amongst them is number 2, POBs are complex instruments that carry considerable risk. POB structures may incorporate the use of guaranteed investment contracts, swaps, or derivatives, which must intensively scrutinized as the embedded products can introduce counterparty risk, credit risk, and interest rate risk. It talks again and again about the fact that pension obligation bonds do not absolve the issuing municipality of risk.
Okay.
Point.
Yes.
We talked about bonds
We already talked about
All right,
bonds.
so
We are
now
now
we're
on
talking about
millage.
millage,
Yes.
right?
We are now on millage, and we're going to bring it back to millage. Okay, thank you, though. Okay. Ron? Has to be about millage, though.
I'm
We'll
not,
talk about that.
yes.
Okay.
I'm not going to be in favor of a millage, asking the voters to pony up again when we've proven at the county that we've mismanaged their funds already. I couldn't tell them that, I couldn't guarantee them that they would be managed properly this time. So just to ask them to vote and you have to remember that everybody that votes is really not a taxpayer. They live in the county and they have the right to vote, and I appreciate that, but it's the taxpayers that's paying it. The property owners, the renters that are renting, they pay taxes as well. They sometimes might not think they do, but they pay property taxes through their rent. So I will not be in favor of a millage.
Okay, let's vote. And to be clear, a yes vote is a no vote for millage.
It's the Lathrop way.
Apparently, we're just going with double negatives, so we're going to say a yes vote.
Yes
is
means
voting no to millage. Sarah, please. Roll call.
Mayor?
I do not support having a millage.
He votes yes.
Got it. Lathrop?
Yes.
Q. Johnson?
Yes.
Klaus?
Yes.
Crawford?
Yes.
Wow.
Wasn't that easy?
See, that one we'll have to visit again, will we?
No, that one is done.
Okay.
Okay, now, we have a couple more what I would consider smaller questions. Like I said, the bond one failed, so I assume that we'll bring that back on July 19th. Okay, we need to talk about the OPEB and what we want to do about that. It had been mentioned a couple weeks ago, or in our last, I believe, study session about buying it out. Was there any research done on buying out the OPEBs and then not offering that anymore? Yes, can I hear about that, please?
So buying out of the benefits is an excellent idea for limiting the long-term liability. It front-loads it as opposed to having that ongoing expense. I would just note that we have 13 unions. We have 7 groups, I believe it was, in the last actuarial valuation for OPEB that still actively receive retiree health care. So we would have to first engage an actuary or an expert to identify what the associated liability may be with those active employees that still remain, to negotiate with them the terms of the buyout. So to be realistic on this timeline, we have not yet been able to provide any data on what the cost might look like to buy out, what the feasibility may be to negotiate with those 7 groups, and what the timeline would be.
Okay, and we probably can't afford it anyway.
We don't know.
Not. Well, we don't know, but in the meantime, should we approve the MERS retiree healthcare funding vehicle for starting to save for these liabilities? Because we haven't saved for them ever. So, right,
We have $250,000 that we put aside.
But we haven't.
We haven't placed it.
We haven't invested it or placed it or anything.
It's just-
Okay,
It's in
Dan.
limbo.
I would like to make a motion
Okay,
that the board approve the MERS retiree healthcare funding vehicle for funding the county's OPEB liability and authorize payment of $250,000 of general fund unrestricted fund balance. Would this be a year, Tom, or just a one-time?
This is a one-time based on what we have set aside for that, which is 250, but we
we
would,
could budget for whatever we
Budget would
felt we
determine-
could every
So then I'm
year.
making that motion.
Okay,
Okay.
is there a second?
Second.
Okay, moved by Commissioner Lathrop, seconded by Commissioner Klaus. Discussion?
A discussion.
Yeah.
If we put in $250,000, are we starting from zero? We don't have?
Yes.
we have never, I'm sorry.
Okay,
We've
we are,
never
right?
fun-
Yeah,
we-
okay.
We've never funded that.
So what percentage would that be if we added the $250,000?
Well, we owe 7.7, may I?
Yep.
We owe 7.7 million, and we owe 7.5, I
Okay.
guess, 7.550, so it would just reduce that amount.
It's a small start.
We did in the past, last year, we were paying for, when they reached the Medicare, we were paying for the supplemental. We stopped that, that saved $2.1 million, and we lowered the amount we were supplementing from $350 to $100. Could still act on the remaining $100 going forward because it's not constitutionally guaranteed, so that's part of the legacy cost you could change structurally by eliminating that. The others would have to be negotiated in contractual negotiations with unions.
Okay, so, and this is this idea is the recommendation of staff, administration, finance, right?
Yes.
We think it'd be a good thing to do.
You might not hear me say that, so I just thought, I'm asking, I'm going to approve something that you've recommended, so.
Okay.
Big day in my life, so.
Okay.
I'm all right, Andy.
Any other discussion? I think we can go with all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? That passes. So go with that. What should we do about the Pension Advisory Board? Do we need them? Do we dissolve it? What do we do? Go, Bob.
Well, I mean, you know, this is something that you need to stay on top of, so I don't see why we would even contemplate dissolving it right now. To have someone, some experts into the field to look at this on a regular basis, how's that going to hurt us?
Doesn't. Dan?
For me, it is a way to keep it transparent and in the public view so that what we're dealing with now never happens again. Last boards let this all sneak by under the radar because they could. I would imagine that this board would make quarterly reports to the employees and to our tax-paying citizens and to the board so that we can't ever say, well, we didn't know. And then if we do get into a position where we're managing some of our own funds, these people can advise us. But the biggest thing for me is to give transparency to our employees so they're not skittish. They realize they're going to get, believe me, I want them to get what we promised them. And this would help ensure that. It would also let the community understand what's really true, and there wouldn't be a lot of innuendo and guessing and rumor mongering. To dissolve this would be a big mistake.
Okay, but you would advocate changing their charge at this point. What we want them to do for us going forward is a little bit different than what we wanted initially, correct?
That could be discussed, but
Okay.
to dissolve it,
But you would like to move forward with, we're going to have an ad hoc committee to get 3 new citizens because the citizens that we had resigned because they were mad because we didn't do a
I
village.
just think we need one.
Okay.
Okay.
Tom?
Madam Chair, if I may, really building on some of the comments that already have come forth, when I had asked what happened and I had talked to a number of people, the constant comment I got was, well, I didn't know. No one told me. I wasn't aware, you know. So this was something that I proposed that I thought would do what I think many of you mentioned. Transparency, no transparency. Communication, no communication. Quarterly reviews, employees know what's going on, board knows what's going on, community knows what's going on. A balanced board based on staff, but also 3 people from the community. The original intent was to develop, because we were in this exploratory stage, the charter was to develop a stabilization plan, and they did do that. Reviewed and gave recommendations to this board for consideration. Acted on one of them, as a matter of fact, which is the amortization schedule. If we decide to go outside MERS for additional funding to stabilize the 5.9, this board cannot make financial decisions.
You mean this board?
This board can't do that, is my understanding. You can give the criteria, but I believe...
We would have to give the investment ability over to the pension advisory board.
But now you're going to have to help me on this because we've been talking about this in depth. There are some real restrictions. Public Act 20, for example, says you are only allowed to invest in 2 vehicles, treasury bonds, CDs, cash. So you're really restricted and it's really low risk. But on the other hand, if you're looking at a real stable fund that doesn't have a lot of movement as you put money into it, so that when this other one has the volatility, you want a stable fund there. You don't want to take high risk on that. You'd rather take lower returns for stability and keep your asset base protected as compared to putting it in the volatility matrix that you have over here. So that board would have a lot of restrictions on that. Now, if you went into the MERS account, and Tony can help me on this, they have an account, but we have to put it into the MERS account. We can't keep it outside the MERS account, and so it becomes part of their overall investment strategy. Though my understanding is, Tony, stand up so I can ask you this. So you there? Oh. Well, the issue is they do give us some flexibility, though it's in the MERS investment portfolio. And they currently have 13 funds that you could invest in, and they may be going to 18. But it goes into MERS as compared to an irrevocable trust where it stays out. But if you use Act 20, you really are restricted in what you can do. I did this when I was a city treasurer. I think I told you I took over the fire department, which was doing day trading. They had a lot of time, so they were day trading, just losing everything. But we had restrictions, and I had 4 vehicles I could work with, and that was fixed assets, equities, and then each quarter we reviewed them. Each year we had a criteria of what we wanted, and we did RFPs for them, and then we, based on performance, moved forward this board. So it's basically that same concept. I thought it would work here, and it would certainly take care of the lack of communication, but also because if we had this own fund, it's so restrictive, you really don't have to make a lot of decisions, I think. Tony? You can't even go to the bathroom here, I tell you this stuff. I was trying to explain my understanding of the MERS trust fund that was designed for putting assets in. We have our normal 5.9 contribution. But in addition, you have accounts set up which has been for non-MERS customers. But you have said that you would allow us to go in that investment portfolio. Is that correct?
Yes, we would allow you to do so.
But we would then be included and counted in the overall MERS fund balance, right? And you would restrict us in terms of what we could invest in, which would be, there's 13 funds that you have available, which may go to 18 next year.
No, there's a little confusion there. If you wanted to have those assets counted into the fund balance, they'd have to go into the MERS
the overall investment,
the overall fund. If you want to have that flexibility of investing at a certain one of those 13 different,
right?
We can make that available to you. But as we have gone through in great detail, we can make it available to you, and we can sit there and state a case of why we think that you would be allowed to do so. But we also could tell you that it's a gray area, and there is a chance that it would be in violation of, you may have to follow Public Act 20 with the investment of those dollars. And those 13 funds don't comply. So if you were going to go down that road, we would say, please make sure that you're comfortable and you've done your due diligence to see if that ISP program, because it's not a trust, it's an investment services program, meets what your council says that it meets all the requirements. We would state an argument that would say that it's possible, but we know the other argument, and we think that it's gray.
Let me simplify it for you then. Public Act 20 is very restrictive. You can do 2 things, T-bills and cash or CDs. If you're looking for a real conservative approach to build up cash reserves to make sure you can continue that 5.9 amortization schedule based on the volatility of the markets, then you would stay outside of MERS probably and just set up an irrevocable trust.
So this is a good reason to have a pension board.
Would then be the one that would manage that and report
to make
back.
these weird decisions for us. So let's go with Jody, who's going to bust, and then Dan.
Okay, I'm going to make a motion.
Let's hear from Jody, and then you make a motion. We already have, oh no, we don't.
There's no motion.
You're right, go.
I feel like this matter is currently clear as mud.
Well, let's stick to This is something that the
thought I was
Pension
clear.
Advisory Board, this is why we need the Pension Advisory Board, correct?
Yeah, I was justifying the
Because that's what we're talking about.
I concur.
Yes, that's why, thank you. So that you don't burst and make it even more muddy. We're just talking
she'd
about,
never do that.
this is a prime example of why we probably need a Pension Advisory Board to come and make things clear for us and to make these decisions for us, which, yes.
So I will withhold my comment regarding the matter of the ISP
Yeah,
and
let's-
Public Act 20.
Wait till the next pension board meeting. Dan,
I make the motion that we retain the Pension Advisory Board and that we can discuss its specific functions at a later date.
do you want to add on there that we will appoint 3 more citizens?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
Okay, that's my motion.
Yeah, I'd like to ask,
Well, do we need a second before we can move on?
okay.
I'll
Support.
second, okay.
Okay. We
So
got the
moved by Commissioner Lathrop and seconded by Commissioner
Can we
Klaus.
also be
Discussion.
open to how we're going to select the members?
Well, we'd have an ad hoc committee
Okay.
Yeah.
that would select.
And then
the
we
members.
decide after we selected the members what kind of authority they would have?
Yeah, then
Because-
we'll give them a charge. We'll talk about it at a later date what their charge will be.
I think that's all negotiable. I mean, that's
Okay.
always, I mean, even if we,
Because I'm not set in my, my belief on some of that.
Yeah.
And I think we should take a second look at how, who we want to make up the board, basically.
Well, the board is already set, except for the 3 citizens who resigned. So we would need to replace the 3 citizens. So if this passes, I would ask then for an ad hoc committee to interview for 3 new people.
Madam Chair, you had 4, which is the county administrator, the chairwoman or chairperson of the board, and you have the county treasurer and the finance director. The charter was a little different because we were in an infant stage of starting to move on what we're going to do with the pension issue. We emphasized in looking for the 3 community volunteers that they have a strong finance background because it was a very finance-oriented thing. I mean, I would recommend personally that if you do look at people, they sure better understand finance or they aren't going to be much value there, So keep the politics out of it and just look for skill sets, I think is what I'm saying.
I agree.
Any further discussion on Dan's motion? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed?
I'll say aye, I guess.
So you're aye.
So you got unanimous.
Okay. Now,
What
Who
is
would-
next?
who would like to be on the ad hoc committee to choose the 3, we might as well get this done now, who would like to be on the ad hoc committee to choose the 3 citizens, since I am, okay? Carol, Dan, and Tom.
Okay.
So Chris Kramer is out there. I know
She's
she
always
is.
out there.
And she will advertise for the openings on our pension advisory board. Ad hoc. Moving on. Oh, thank goodness. Update on the administrator search. Commissioner Mayer and I had a conference call with James Vetrano with GovHR on Friday? Is that Friday? Yes. I think so.
Yeah,
Last
give or take a
Friday.
day, yep.
And he will be providing to us a binder, I think, near the end of this week, with somewhere between 6 and 10 very strong candidates. We had over 40 apply. Some right off the top were taken out, didn't qualify, not really
That
serious.
was me and Dr. Lathrop, they threw us right
No,
in.
they knew what you were coming from already. And so he will have narrowed it down to, like I said, between 6 to 10, who are willing to be discussed, at least by number,
Okay.
in a public meeting. So we will get that, I believe, near the end of this week. He would like to come on June 28th, next Wednesday, and we will have a special meeting if we can get 3 signatures, which Sarah has, special meeting at 4 o'clock to discuss on next Wednesday before the animal control, to discuss which of those candidates we would like to have come in person and interview. you can let us know.
I
if
can
you
be
are
here
gonna be there.
at 4.
Okay.
I'm going to Interlochen, I'm going to see a concert. So,
Oh, okay.
I mean, I had tickets for a while, so.
Oh, so 4's good,
McDonald.
and then you can go. Okay, that's fine. So it'll probably be short, just, let's talk about them by number, and I'm confident several will kind of stick out and say, interview me, me, and me, and then he will go through and bring them to us.
So we won't have any confidentiality issues because it's numbered and everything?
Because everyone that is in the binder will have stated that at this point, if they want to be further considered, they have to be okay with that.
So there'll be names?
We will have names, but we will discuss them by number.
Okay.
Okay?
trying
So
to
that's
get
the
clear.
update on that. So if 3 wouldn't mind signing with Sarah before you go. And in addition, there will be one other small point of business on that meeting. There's some pension obligation bonds for the new PACE facility. So.
Not pension.
Oh, no, I'm sorry, what was it? No, I read the wrong thing. No.
You just tried to get me
It's a
riled
capital improvement.
It's a resolution to approve plans, cost estimate, estimate of the period of usefulness, and lease contract for consideration for the Pavilion's PACE project.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I had too many papers on my desk and couldn't find that exact one. So I stand corrected. So those 2 things will be on the special meeting at 4 o'clock. Both won't take very long, I don't think.
Then we'll have a regular meeting at 5:30.
Then we have our study session on animal control
All right.
at 5:30. So that moves us down to...
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Just for clarification, on 10A, item number 2, this was regarding the investment services program?
Yes. We didn't address that because we didn't address that because we didn't approve a millage, so we wouldn't be getting an extra funds, and we have not yet approved a bond in any form, so we wouldn't be getting extra.
We're not taking any action on that.
We're not taking any action on that at the time because there really is no reason to.
Perfect.
That's why I skipped over that one, sorry.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. New business, none.
So we'll start at 4 for the
Start at 4.
search and 5:30 for the regular meeting?
For the animal control.
Yep.
We're going to move on to second public comment. Anybody? Oh, yes, ma'am. We gave you an obstacle course that you have to go through before you can even
You
get
have
up
to
here
really
for
want to
your 3
speak to
minutes.
us.
My name is Jerry Leroy. I live at 885 East South Airport Road, Traverse City. I came here tonight because I was really curious about how this might go. So far, I'm happier than I thought I was going to be. The only thing that I'm questioning, and maybe it's because the information hasn't been discussed that much, I would like a clear idea of what spending cuts you have made to get up to what you need. That's the problem I think we've had all along, is too much spending. When I first moved into this county, that's what I saw when I came to some meetings. Too much money was being granted to things that weren't government business. And that's one of the things I would like to be sure is remembered and corrected before we move forward with the solutions to catch up. Because it's important to keep intact always that you're not doing favors for certain people or being nice to people because it's a soft spot for you, but you keep with what the government is supposed to be doing and let charities and other things take care of other people's needs. You're an elected official to spend my taxpayer dollars, and I give charity where I want to give it to, not where you decide to give it to. So that's important to me. And I think talking to many people that I deal with, that's important to them too. And that's what I look at when I'm working on the Parks Committee. Because we don't give away what isn't ours to give. That's up to other people to do their charity or their donations of any kind. But with that in mind, I'm grateful that you have negated the millage. We've had far too many of those thrown at us over the last several years. And I don't like that because it's a sign of making us make up for your shortcomings that are the elected officials. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I was pleased with this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anybody else?
Wish I had a green card.
I will, but this time you're timed. No, this time you get your 3 minutes because now you're public.
Sarah, let's let me get here. I just want to quickly, we touched on the corner of the Civic Center property, and that needs to get out in the public. There is going to be some construction, I would call it, at the Civic Center in that northwest corner, as we talked. We do have a Starbucks and Rite Aid, I believe, going in next to us. Part of their problem, why they came to us to talk about a possible solution, was if they renovate that area and put a parking lot in, they could end up with a 12 to 15-foot wall. And those aren't safe. There's no reason to do that. There's ways that we can grade the Civic Center grounds to make it fit better with their proposal, and they're going to reciprocate with the Parks Board in doing possible landscaping and other things for us. So, but it all started with Consumers Power, who's going to take down trees in that property no matter what. Sorry, Bob. Consumers Power is coming in there, going to take trees down. No matter what, if we develop land, don't touch it, it doesn't matter. Consumers has already got it on their list. So folks that come to the Civic Center and start seeing trees taken down, obviously they get some people concerned right away. You guys need to know that's going to happen up front because you may hear it too. So, but we are working very well together with consumers, the developers, and ourselves to put together a program that will look very well, or very good there. And I just wanted you guys to know that because it was touched on, and I don't want that to go on without people knowing what's going to happen there. But it's right now a great working group, and looking forward to working with these guys and getting some things done. Consumers have been awful generous. If we have anything else that looks bad in that area, we might be able to get a couple things taken out too. So
it's going to be a Rite Aid and a Starbucks?
I believe that's the combination. I don't know if
is that one structure, or do you know?
I believe it is. Yeah,
okay.
I believe it is, Tom.
What about the Rite Aid at the corner of 8th and Garfield? Is that
We're
going to go?
actually in public comment, and we're not
Okay.
supposed to have a dialogue in between.
Oh, I think you can.
You can ask them after.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
Which one are you talking about?
The other Rite Aid, is it going to go?
And it may not be a Rite Aid, it might be a
okay.
Walgreens. That's why I hate to throw out the pharmacy, because I don't know for sure. I know it's a Starbucks, I know it's a pharmacy, I'm not sure exactly the company, but the developer has come to us and asked for some leniency and some help, but they're willing to reciprocate back to us. So we've got a good program. We haven't voted on anything yet, but it's going to probably come to the Parks Board July or August on some ideas on what to vote on. So just to let you know that's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, I guess we are allowed to ask questions of them. Okay. Anybody else for public comment? You can't talk on the same thing twice. Okay.
Andy Merrick, 2875 East Railroad Avenue, Interlochen, Michigan. What have you guys done? I think you've done quite a bit. You worked out a deal with MERS, smoothed things out a little bit. You're starting to unearth some issues. What do we have as assets? We didn't know that for years. I sit on several boards, as most of you know, and we're running into that same thing at the other boards. What do we have? What do we own? What are our liabilities? What are our repairs? The library, for the love of God, the roof wasn't installed properly. They didn't use rubber grommets on the washers. It's been leaking for 20 years. You got that same issues here where things were just kind of, well, it'll get taken care of later. So you're looking at an asset plan, I hope. It sounds like it. I don't believe Tom would not let that happen. You're taking steps to get to gathering the information and make the decisions that you need to make. You can't just make decisions because, oh, this sounds good. And I appreciate that. I don't think the public is aware that you guys aren't just throwing darts at a dartboard trying to solve problems. You're looking at what the issues are, trying to figure out where can you cut without just cutting. And people react emotionally to the things that you guys discuss, and I appreciate you taking the time and taking some of the heat for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Merrick.
Could we give him 6 minutes?
He's done.
Bring him
He's
back.
stepped away.
Bring him
I
back,
know, you
yeah.
want him to stroke us a little bit
Yeah,
more.
that feels pretty good, yeah.
Thank you. Anybody else? Okay, we're moving on to Commissioner Department reports. First I have, well, I'll leave this till the end. I need to assign an ad hoc committee for Building Authority. We have one position available on the Building Authority. I can assign it to those who aren't here if nobody wants to do it. I would like to do it. I haven't done that before. I don't see any big hands, so it can be me and Cheryl and Sunny. That's fine. All right. That's for Building Authority. We have a department update, Community Development. I'm sorry that you waited so long. You were so patient, Ms. Dorenzi, to wait through all of that. This is our 5-minute update.
Oh.
But it's not timed, so go.
Okay, I'll go really fast.
No, okay.
Good evening. My name is Jean Dorenzi. I'm the Director of Community Development and Codes. It's a relatively new department. It's about 1.5 years old, and all of the programs that fall under community development have been operational and been working for the county. But when, about 1.5 years ago, we combined soil erosion, construction code, brownfield, economic development, housing, and land bank, and tried to look at efficiencies. How can these departments be more efficient and be progressive in moving each of the programs forward? I'd like to highlight on each of the programs individually, and the first is soil erosion. Soil erosion was basically an impetus of why we wanted to look at it differently, to look at more efficiency. DEQ placed soil erosion on probation in late 2015. And we took soil erosion and brought them over into this department, and we really looked at the bottom up and the top down to really streamline it better. We looked at adding, we had 2 part-time inspectors, we increased it to 2 full-time inspectors. We looked at different programming, so we used the AS400, but put new programs in so we could have weekly reports on sensitivity permits. So sensitivity permits are when you go out and you issue a permit. Every permit has either a 1, 2, 3, or 4, depending on the typographical contours of the site and the soils. And so we know now that when these files and permits are ready to go out and looked at. And we also have a computer report that is every month that identifies when the reports, when the permits will be expired. And also, the other thing that we put into place is a sensitivity report to look at stabilization for every, for the soils that are in Grand Traverse County. What stabilization mean? Stabilization just isn't carte blanche for the state of Michigan. Each county is different based on the soils there. So we were proactive in looking at what is the sensitivity for these sites and what stabilization means. So when DEQ comes back and says, well, in Berry County, stabilization means this, we can say, in Grand Traverse, it means this because of these types of soils. So we were proactive on that, and we're moving forward. The program is self-sustaining. It's difficult. Well, it's close to self-sustaining. We're maybe $10,000 or $15,000 short on being self-sustaining, but we are looking at fees and looking at the master fees to have these more in line with where they should be, so it can be a self-sustaining organization or program. We're hoping to move the program back to Lafreniere. That will help the customers for that. They'll be closer to all of the other permitting agencies over there. Soil erosion serves Grand Traverse County. The city of Traverse City has their own soil erosion, so soil erosion really does cover the whole county. We are working now with the DEQ on the administrative consent agreement, and we received the consent agreement to say that if you sign, you'll be on probation for 2 more years. Well, we're not going to accept that because we've been on probation for a year and a half already, and we've made the effective tools to have soil erosion ready and operational. So we will be working with them our goal is to be off probation by the end of this year. And with that also comes a new ordinance. The previous board set a new ordinance in place, approved it, a prosecutor signed off, it's been over in DEQ, but once we were on probation, we could not institute that new ordinance. So with this new board, we need to bring that ordinance back to you so you're very familiar with it, so you know the difference between the old and the new, and be able to move that ordinance, whether it's tweaked, whether it's revised, whether it's a new approach on it. But that's another piece that when we're off, we'll be able to move in a different direction as well. The next one is construction.
No, wait, can we ask questions on each one of these, or wait till it's done?
I hope so.
Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead and
Okay.
ask.
You said you're going to move it back to Lafreniere.
Yes.
Under what department?
Under what department? We're still working on that. The efficiency component, when we first started, it was all about efficiency. What we're working on now, and I think I can say this, is we're working with environmental health.
So they'll be under the health department.
Under the health department.
And that's, by the way, done quite a bit in the state of Michigan, where the health department manages soil erosion.
Yes. There's many different counties that have it under the health department.
We met today on that.
Yeah, because, thank you. That's what I was hoping you'd say.
The construction code, the codes are to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare as they relate to the construction and occupancy of buildings and structures. Construction code is a service that we do for all of Grand Traverse County, except Garfield Township does their own building permits. But for Garfield Township, we do all the trades, being plumbing, mechanical, and electrical. So we issue all those permits, and we also do all the inspections, of course, on those trades. For a population for Grand Traverse County of 92,000, that's a very unique model.
Does Fife Lake still have their own inspector, Gene? I think Fife Lake takes care of their own building inspection as well, as Garfield.
They might do their building, but we do all their trades. I believe that we still do Fife Lake, but I'll double check that. I was looking at the reports today, and Fife Lake is on there, but it's probably just on trades.
Trades.
We do Fife Lake.
Even
building.
Even building? So they must have dropped their inspector then that they had.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Yep. When it comes to construction code, they are an enterprise fund. I think Commissioner Klaus identified that during the meeting. So they're a self-sustaining fund. Construction code kind of goes under the radar a lot, but they are such a critical component of Grand Traverse County because it's about the safety of the building to be an asset to not just the owner of the building, but an asset to the community as a whole as well. We want to ensure that the safety of the buildings are there and that our inspectors have all of the tools that they can have to be able to get into those buildings and inspect appropriately. We have outstanding inspectors. We have great staff over there. And the building permits from 2014 to 2015 raised over 12.1%. From 15 to 16, it was only 1.5%. So you can see that it's stabilizing a little bit, but the commercial is really the key on construction code when it comes to the self-sustaining. And the housing market in Long Lake is tremendously large. So Long Lake was, when you look at the reports on where all of the permits are pulled, Long Lake is definitely one that you can see is definitely popping on the housing piece. What else on construction code? One of the things I want to highlight is where the difficulties on each of these programs. For construction code, I would say that one of the changes that we've made is we're trying to move from a contract inspector to an employee inspector. So we are moving in that direction, so we don't have 4 employees that are doing inspection and 4 contractors that are doing inspections. We want to have employees. That's our primary purpose as a department, and they should be employees out there doing those inspections on behalf of the county. The other components that we really want to look at, and about a year ago I indicated, it's the software. It's not just the software that finance can do or other departments can do. It's really construction code software. It's out there, and we have went out for bids, but we're working with administration and IT to really make sure that it fits in with our program as well. But that would make such a big difference for construction code if we had updated software. We have fund balance to be able to pay for that, but we do want to be able to ensure that it works with any of the system that we have, so it ties into the assessing department, the equalization department, and the treasury department, and the finance department. It all works together, but it's different when it comes to construction code software, because you get blueprints, we have inspectors out in the field, we want them to have tablets and to have real digital time, so the contractors can look online to see, 1, where are their permits, 2, how did the inspection go? Instead of having to call the office, it should be right online. Everything should be digitalized in this day and age. We'd really like to even be able to do credit cards online. We're working with that, and we're hoping to have that in September. Might seem really obvious that why can't we take credit cards? We're hoping to take credit cards in 2017, this year. So the next is Brownfield. Brownfield is there any questions on construction code?
I would just add that we have a draft of the IT strategic plan, which has really been holding her up. We're going over that draft now, so we should be able to move on that fairly quickly on your software applications. The other thing is that in having full-time employees, we are hoping we can cross-train. So when someone comes out for one thing, they would have the ability to also inspect something else and do 2 things at once, for example, and cut down time a great deal. So working on cross-training of people, when you have a full-time employee, you can do more of that as compared to a contractual that's just doing one thing.
And our hire for our plumbing inspector is a dual license. He can do a plumbing inspection as well as a mechanical inspection.
And speed up the jobs a lot quicker.
It does help. Brownfield, you're probably familiar with the Brownfield. It's a great public-private partnership. And it's an economic tool that has really worked well for Grand Traverse County. And when you look at soil erosion, construction code, Brownfield, all of those programs serve it county-wide. And that is a unique tool that the county should be, I would say, be applauded for. It's a collaborative effort. Instead of having 5 townships do the same thing, the county is really doing this program on behalf and as a partner with those townships in the city. So it's not easy to do. It's about communication, 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 and make sure that we're meeting those needs of that township and be able to effectively manage the program. For the brownfield, I can say that we're one of the more successful brownfields. When you look at the village at Grand Traverse County, River's Edge, 101 North Park Street, the Hardy Parking Garage, there's numerous projects that have moved the county forward and the city forward and other programs forward as well. The challenges for the brownfield, I kind of touched on. It's to balance what the county's needs are between the villages and the city's needs are, and be able to communicate what the benefit of that public-private partnership is and what the end result is for the public's benefit as well. We had an ad hoc committee for the Brownfield Authority with 2 representatives of the county and the city, And it's that communication that I think that we always need to have to be able to ensure the effectiveness of the program. The land bank and the housing, I think I'll stop on the I'll end with the Economic Development Corporation, because that is the newest EDC board. The first meeting started on January 18th. They've been very busy. They have, we have an RFP to repurpose the website, where they have a new vision and mission plan. They have a presence at the Center for Automotive Research. They are hosting a dinner during that Center for Automotive Research conference. They are part of that team. They are marketing and branding, and at the end of this year, they will be looking at a strategic plan for a 1- and 2-year, and then a 5-year plan. They first looked at January to do a strategic plan, but they really wanted to step back, get a lay of the land, get a feel for the community and the business side of things before they did that strategic plan, which was a wise choice because they also wanted to look at being able to leverage some other resources as well. And they are working with Tom Menzel and Marty Colburn in looking at different resources to leverage into the EDC board. So those are the...
I'm just building on your comments, of course. One of the things which we're trying to do is develop more collaboration, building on the comments of Marty and I. What we've come to realize, or what I've come to realize, and I think it's resonated, is that we are now what we would call a small metropolitan area with an urban core. Traverse City with the townships. Everything that we do here is based on a rural county model, which doesn't exist anymore, but we still try to force fit that. So we've been reevaluating the way we do things to bring it more up in line with what the future is. Prime examples, if we get fiber optics in here, you're going to see massive growth 3 to 5 years. So we need to have a model that really can help drive that process in a more balanced fashion. Case in point, the airport is a critical component of an economic development model. They've just been left out. And so we're structuring, we're going to be requesting a restructuring, bringing the airport on the board, for example, having the city and the county on the board. So a collaborative effort on economic development going forward that is balanced, bringing all the key players and components in, and the EDC being the driving force in doing that. So that's kind of exciting, and of course Gene plays a key role in doing that.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions for Gene?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Good job, Gene.
Good update. Okay, notices. We have animal control discussion on June 28th, next Wednesday at 5:30. Before I go into these others, I had quite a few calls, I don't know if anybody else did, or emails, that when talking about how to fund the pension obligations and things, we've had several people bring up that the road commission is doing things they don't like or whatever, and the money should be better spent on the pension obligations, and I just want to make it very clear, that is a separate unit. The money that the road commission spends has nothing to do with the county budgeting, county funding at all. It's all completely separate money. So we can't touch it. It's all for roads. And if you have concerns about the way they're spending their money, they have open meetings as well for the road commission. So I don't want anybody out there just still thinking that we can get money from the road commission if they don't do certain projects. That doesn't work that way. It is only road money.
Can I also
Yes,
add,
you can.
speaking of emails, to let everyone know, yes, we did sell that property to the Conservancy.
We are still getting emails saying,
We're still
please
getting
do
emails
this,
to say,
and we've
please
already
sell
done
it.
it. So
We did that.
it's done. We did what you asked us to do, so it's good.
No matter where you lived.
Yeah.
Okay, notices, I wanted to let everybody know about several of these different learning opportunities that we have. There is a National Association of Counties Conference, July 21st through the 24th in Columbus, Ohio. I put in the packet the schedule. If anybody, we have budget money to go to these conferences. If anybody finds anything there that they would be interested in, talk to Chris Kramer. She can help you with arrangements if you would like to go. There's a Michigan Association of Counties Conference, September 24th through the 26th on Mackinac Island. It's at the Grand Hotel.
I've never been.
There goes the
We are
funds you
not
had
staying
set
at the
aside,
Grand
man.
Hotel. So if you would like to go, you need to stay someplace else
Chris, I want to go.
besides the
Yeah,
Grand. Okay.
yeah.
And Chris Kramer will help us with
Yeah,
those arrangements
all
as well. And if you decide to also go to the MERS Conference, that is September 21st through 22nd in Detroit. If anybody's interested in any of those learning opportunities, we do provide that, so.
Also,
Anybody else? Yes.
and, because I don't have any dates, but I know they're getting ready to start pumping here soon, in another week or so, right?
Yeah.
What?
At the dams?
The dewatering?
Yes.
Yeah, that is.
Starts tomorrow?
Scheduled to begin now on Friday.
Okay.
Okay.
There will be water under the Cass Road Bridge.
So it's all water under the bridge now at this point?
Now it
Yeah,
is,
water under the
or it
dam.
will be. Okay. You had to add that, didn't you?
I've actually been asked when it was going to start, so.
Yes.
And they'll be shutting down the road then, once they get the water going and have lowered it enough, then they'll knock down the powerhouse, which will put that road out of commission. Last I heard was August timeframe, something like that, so.
Okay, Dan?
They're going to move the water to the old riverbed,
Yes.
okay? And it will stay there, they're not moving it back.
No,
right?
they're not moving it
That'll be
back.
there forever now.
Yes.
That's the plan, yes, to
Good,
restore the
okay.
river to its natural state.
All right, cool.
Hope it stays there.
No closed session. And with that, we are adjourned.
All right.
Bob, you look like you need a nap.